frankly, more aggressive approach that the president employed today.
If the president had a theme, it may have been finish the job, only because he mentioned that phrase verbatim multiple times. He was asking for lawmakers, after praising them as a group for helping, bring back jobs and come back from COVID, he asked them to pass things like lower insulin costs for people who are not on Medicare, pass antitrust legislation, universal pre-K, police reform. Did either of you, Jared, in your capacity as covering Congress and the White House, and Josh as our analyst, did any of that strike you as anything Republicans would be open to finishing the job on?
Finishing the job, I guess, is in the eye of the beholder.
Sure.
There are certainly issues there that there is some consensus that things could get done. You look at something like police reform. That is something in the George Floyd Police Reform Act that was worked on an awful lot the last Congress. At one point, seemed that there was going to be a bipartisan agreement reached. You had Republicans and Democrats working together. Ultimately, what sort of stalled that piece of legislation were disputes over how to handle something like immunity for police officers, right? So you really got to that sort of level of specificity before it sort of collapsed. So I think that there is probably some ground there. If
something to work on.
Right. If they want. Now, whether or not the president would view that as finishing the job, I guess, is in the eye of the beholder. So there are some issues there. I certainly think when you heard the president talk about reining in big tech, again, Republicans and Democrats sometimes come at that issue from different directions in different perspectives. But there is an overarching sense that technology and the technology firms have an awful lot of influence and an awful lot of control over an awful lot of Americans, and it's time for Congress to step in, whether it's something like Meta and Facebook or whether it's with the Chinese-owned company TikTok and sort of the influence that has and the capabilities of data collection and espionage that may hold. So I do think that as the president talked about finishing the job, is there going to be big, grand, sort of build back better legislation that the president's calling for, universal pre-K? Probably not, but there are certainly areas there where I think you're going to see Congress try and attack from at least a couple of standpoints.
And before I let you go, Josh, I have to ask you about the Republican response from Sarah Huckabee Sanders. She noted she's the first female governor of Arkansas. She's the youngest governor currently. And while she used pretty stark language to paint a difference between what she believes Republicans stand for versus Democrats, She also kept, as you noted, saying the phrase, it's time for a new generation of Republican leaders, new generation, and yet told this very lengthy story about her time with President Trump. What did you make of the juxtaposition of that?
Well, look, I think that is where the Republican Party is right now. A lot of people think Trump could be the nominee again in 2024. The subtle message from Sarah Huckabee Sanders was Biden is too old. Trump did a good job. We should salute him for his service as president, but we also need a new generation of leadership on the Republican side. So that is that's what Sarah Huckabee Sanders, certainly a loyal Trump supporter, at least in the past, served under the former president. But I heard that this is a party that may want to look at some new leaders for 2024 and give Donald Trump maybe a gold watch and move on the scene for the political future.
Josh Krausauer, our political analyst and Axios senior political correspondent, and Washington, D.C. correspondent Jared Halpern. Thank you both so much for joining.
This is News Talk STL at 1019, 94.1 and newstalkstl.com.
Paid for by Christian Care Ministry.
Let's see, if something costs less, but people are happier with it, that sounds like something to look into, and that's MediShare. Maybe you've heard switching to MediShare to pay for healthcare can save the typical family $500 a month. And that's huge, but it's also true that people are way more satisfied after making the switch, too. The customer satisfaction rate for MediShare is double that of the typical health insurance plan. MediShare works. It's been around for more than a quarter century, and members have shared more than $3 billion of each other's bills. People love having telehealth and a huge nationwide PPO network. So, yeah, you can save a ton and like it better. Imagine being happy with how you're taking care of your health care. So if you're self-employed or part of the gig economy, or you just want a plan you're happy with, you can call right now and get a price within 2 minutes. A very, very smart use of 2 minutes. Here's the number you need. 855-51-BIBLE. That's 855-51-BIBLE. 855-51-BIBLE.
Chris, This needs to go to Parkville by 3.
Joy to the holiday packages that keep coming at Jimenez Couriers.
Offers coming your way, but the drop-off location is changing.
She needs delivery drivers with the gift of punctuality.
Anyone looking to pick up some overtime? Anyone?
Indeed can help her hire great people fast.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. We instantly connect you with quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed match your job description. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
What does it feel like to file with TaxSlayer and get your guaranteed maximum refund? It feels like the last level of a video game, facing off against the final boss who stands between you and your refund.
All your refunders belong to me.
Using the power of TaxSlayer like a secret power-up he doesn't see coming.
Only the most tax-confident can defeat me.
Throwing your laptop at his video game face and watching him crumble into a giant pile of shiny coin tax refunds.
Oh, not fair. You use TaxSlayer.
Start for free and get your guaranteed maximum refund. TaxSlayer. File fearlessly.
Columbo and Katie.
Join us on Wednesday for a State of the Union reaction from the Insider's Insider, Rodney Boyd at 2:20. Then we'll open up Close's Cabinet with Mark Close and Skip Weber at 3:05.
Weekdays at 2 on Newstalk STL.
It's Proctor spelled like doctor for custom window fabrics and shutters. Upgrade or start from scratch. Either way, Michael is the St. Louis expert. Check him out at proctordrapery.com and then call Proctor spelled like doctor for shutters, shades, and draperies.
Proctor Drapery, the best in town. No finer window fashion can be found. Call for an appointment at your home. Spell Proctor like doctor.
Columbo and Katie.
Mark Lauder, Chief Communications Officer at the America's First Policy Institute.
It doesn't matter whether it's Trump, Pence, DeSantis, Pompeo, Nikki Haley, Tim Scott, all the names that have been rumored about, aside obviously Donald Trump has announced, they're all going to be running on the same policies. Yeah. I mean, they're all going to be running on what I like to call America First policy.
Tony Columbo, Katie Fitzpatrick. Weekdays at 2 on Newstalk STL.
Hey, Columbo here for our family dentist, Dr. Matt Boscia at New Creation Dental Care, a one-stop solution for all your family's dental needs, including braces. Dr. Boscia uses the My Forever Smile Braces system, which straightens teeth many times in less than a year for half the price of traditional braces. Traditional braces or Invisalign can cost $6,000 or more, but Dr. Boscia only charges $29.98 for My Forever Smile, and incentives and insurance can lower the price even more. Plus, New Creation offers in-office financing. Learn more at newcreationdentalcare.com.
You can't buy a best friend. You can love them, walk them, pet them, and care for them, whether they want you to or not. You can take a picture or 50. You can fly to the moon, travel the world, or just stay in bed. You can't buy a best friend like that, but you can adopt one. There are millions of pets waiting for a best friend just like you. Help us save them all at bestfriends.org.
The latest news.
Today's hearing is a first step in examining the massive waste, fraud, and abuse in COVID relief programs.
The news you need to know.
We are looking at everybody involved in the beating of Tyree Nichols.
We at the Fed, the time for moderating the pace of rate increases may come. Balloon has violated U.S. airspace.
China should be stood up to.
Was that your laptop?
For real, I don't know.
Is a Russian plan.
And the place to talk about it.
Wake up, America. The Democrats are destroying the country.
101.9 and 94.1 News Talk STL.
A 500-mile all-out fight for NASCAR's biggest prize. That's the Great American Race. The Daytona 500. February 19th, only on Fox.
Now, a look at what's happening from the Fox News Rundown.
Good morning. It's Wednesday, February 8th, 2023. I'm Ted Lindner. This is the Fox News Rundown. Tuesday night, the president delivering his second State of the Union address. The halls of Capitol Hill got a little loud as President Biden took up his speech in the chamber. Fox's Kevin Corke has more.
Congressional Republicans literally calling out the president for what they considered willful, intentional falsehoods about policies they're putting forth.
Some Republicans want Medicare and Social Security to sunset. I'm not saying it's a majority. Let me give you, anybody who doubts it, contact my office. I'll give you a copy. I'll give you a copy of the proposal.
Biden did try to use his address to promote his relatively big government economic agenda. He talked about an expansion of a $35 a month cap on insulin costs. He obviously wants to continue to combat climate change, and he says he wants to enact a universal pre-K program.
Fox's Kevin Cork there. Sarah Huckabee Sanders, the newly installed governor of Arkansas, gave the Republican response. And almost 8,000 are now dead in Turkey and Syria as rescue workers search through the rubble and buildings that collapsed during this week's devastating earthquakes. A 10-year-old girl was pulled out alive on Wednesday from the rubble of the Turkish earthquake. The girl had been buried for 47 hours, getting a kiss from her grandfather as she was carried out on a stretcher. The girl expected to survive. Freezing weather and multiple aftershocks hampering the rescue efforts, with several thousand more feared dead. I'm Ted Lindner on the Fox News Rundown.
This is the Fox News Rundown.
This is News Talk STL at 1019, 94.1 and newstalkstl.com.
So many ways to listen to News Talk STL.
Don't join the conversation. All you have to do is say,
Hey Alexa, play News Talk STL.
Welcome to News Talk STL, conservative talk radio for St. Louis.
Hey folks, Tim Jones here for Hanson's Tree Service, available 24/7 at hansonstree.com. Chad Hanson offering a 10% winter discount for everyone in News Talk STL Nation for all tree care services performed from now until March 31st, 2023. Just mention that when you're giving them a call. That includes all removals, trim and pruning, deadwood removal, stump grinding, everything for the exterior of your home, all your landscaping around that homestead or small business. Great chance to save money and time before winter storms really roll in. 636-379-1830, 24/7 at hansonstree.com.
Hey, it's Katie. We here at News Talk STL really appreciate the growth in our business during our first 18 months since we signed on the air. We appreciate the great local businesses like Save Money with Doug Voss, Crypto World, and the Natural Institute of Health that have all become part of our family of advertising partners. If your business is interested in becoming part of the News Talk STL family, simply send an email to info@newstalkstl.com. 1019-941 News Talk STL.
Hey, it's Vic, and I'm here with Kathy Connor at Connor Roofing. Kathy, what makes Connor Roofing different?
Hey, Vic. I'm glad that you asked. I think that what really sets Connor Roofing apart is our relationship with our customers. It's very important to us to develop that trust with the homeowner. This is what has allowed us to serve our friends and our neighbors in the St. Louis area for 30 years. Whether we are doing a roof or a gutter repair or even a full replacement, you can count on Connor for quality service and workmanship.
Thanks, Kathy. To find out more, visit them at connorroofing.com. That's CONNER roofing.com.
This is an American Red Cross blood donation alert. The Red Cross is facing a severe blood shortage and is urging eligible donors of all types to give now and help avoid delays in life-saving medical care for patients this summer. More donations are needed to replenish the blood supply and help address the extraordinary blood needs of hospitals and patients right now. Be a hero to a patient in need. Use the Blood Donor app. Visit redcrossblood.org or call 1-800-RED-CROSS to make an appointment to help save lives.
What happens next?
For migrants coming into the country.
Happens right here.
We have a broken immigration system because Republicans want us to.
Our borders have been erased.
And frankly, I think it's intentional.
1019 and 94.1 News Talk STL.
Bill O'Reilly here, and I'm warming up. Stand by for the O'Reilly Update Morning Edition. But first, if you are a timeshare owner, you're probably upset that your yearly dues continue to increase. Lone Star Transfer guarantees the release of all liability to your timeshare in writing and done in a specific time frame. They're the only company you can trust, having helped more than 18,000 owners legally and permanently get out. So please call Lone Star Transfer 855-551-7066 or visit LoneStarTransfer.com. On this Wednesday, a series of polls this week say most Americans, including a sizable number of Democrats, do not want President Biden to run for re-election. Now, that should come as little surprise, as Mr. Biden is not really running this country. And voters see that. His advisors tell him what he needs to do, and Jill Biden sees that her husband complies. To be fair, which we always are, you have to admire the message discipline the Biden people put out. There's no problem at the border. Trump, not Biden, is responsible for inflation. Afghanistan, a stunning success, as is the record-breaking federal spending the White House champions. Also, there are very few leaks coming out. Joe and Jill are not being exposed by insiders. You may remember Donald Trump couldn't hire enough plumbers to even slow down the harmful leaks during his administration. The primary problem President Biden and his party has now is a perception of weakness and incompetence. Trump may be bombastic and childish at times, but he is not weak. The USA is not an easy place in which to live these days. There's violence, corruption, and eroding spending power for the folks. Even those who avoid paying attention to their country know things are not good. And the situation will not improve under Joe Biden, who's going downhill faster than Lindsey Vonn. Back after this. No question, there is a concerted effort to intimidate and silence conservative thinkers and replace our God-given individual liberty with big government controls. AMAC, the Association of Mature American Citizens, is the leading conservative advocacy and benefits organization in America. AMAC gives you access to exclusive benefits and all kinds of great content. Please stand with AMAC at amac.us. That's amac.us. That is the Morning O'Reilly Update. More analysis later on.
From the Michaels Flooring Outlet Weather Center.
A dry, chilly morning in St. Louis. Temperatures in the mid to upper 30s and cloudy skies. But by lunchtime, rain will be surging in from the north with scattered showers and a few thunderstorms possible as we go through the evening. And there's even a low risk of severe storms east and south of St. Louis and from St. Louis east and south. Overnight lows tonight in the low 40s. The high on Thursday, 52 degrees under partly cloudy skies. Gets a little breezy. I'm KMOV First Alert meteorologist Kent Earhart.
Talk radio made in St. Louis.
Very excited for what you guys are doing for the St. Louis community.
For St. Louis. Relevant local talk.
Saying what we are thinking.
This is News Talk STL.
No, you guys are awesome. I love you. And it's a tremendous honor to be on the station.
News, analysis, and opinion.
Thanks for covering the local angle.
Come on, people. This is America.
We better open our eyes.
Really local, really good.
News Talk STL at 1019, 94.1,
and newstalkstl.com.
For podcast articles and more, find us on newstalkstl.com. Get up. It's Mike Ferguson in the morning.
Okay, what did you think of the State of the Union address last night? If your expectations were ankle high, maybe the president met them, maybe not. In just a little bit, Paul Kurtman's going to be taking over, and he's going to have the assessment for you and a lot of perspectives on that. Good morning. I'm Mike Ferguson, in for just a little bit here this morning. We had a really good conversation with Carson Steelman from Heritage Action. You remember when the president says, we're going to end these COVID emergencies, but we're going to do it later. Republicans in the House and in the Senate are saying, no, do it right now. Why is it urgent to end these emergency declarations? What's it mean for all of us? Well, Carson had the details for us. If President Biden says we're going to end these national declarations of emergencies over COVID-19 in May, why is it important to push it ending now if he says, yeah, we're going to get around to it?
Yeah, and Mike, thanks for having me. I think this is something that Congress really needs to act on, and they have been, especially this past week, because Biden keeps promising that COVID-19 is over. He declared that himself in September 2022, yet he continues to extend the emergency declarations because he's using them as rationale to keep pushing his longstanding political agenda on the American people. So, I'm not holding my breath for Biden to, stay true on this promise to end the COVID emergency declarations in May. And I don't think Congress should trust President Biden to do it either. So that's why these bills this past week were so important.
What can President Biden do with these emergency orders still in place that he couldn't do anyway when it comes to promoting and pushing his agenda?
Yeah, I think two examples um, of abuses of these national emergency and public health emergency declarations have been the administration's um, decision to waive work requirements for SNAP benefits. They have moved forward with their student debt amnesty scheme. They have continued the moratorium on student loan payments that has cost the country hundreds of billions of dollars. And those things really have nothing to do with COVID. So it's really been just an excuse for the Biden administration to use these expanded authorities that are given to him and his administration under these emergency declarations to do things that are completely unrelated to COVID and the American people don't want. And that's why he's using his executive authority and trying to bypass Congress. Even when he had both chambers of Congress, he still used these emergency and public health emergency declarations to try and get his way because he knew that the things he was pushing for were overwhelmingly unpopular amongst the American people.
Now, would this affect any of the litigation that you can tell regarding, for instance, mask orders on airplanes and buses and all that kind of stuff? I mean, is holding on to that a declaration for a few more months, does that change the powers that they believe that they have?
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to ask the lawyers about the litigation side of this, but what it would do for sure is restrict the authorities that President Biden and his administration have been using to try and implement all these policies, like vaccine mandates for federal healthcare employees and healthcare workers and all that nonsense. That have really been an overstep of his authority as president and his administration's executive authority. So it would definitely help, but you'd have to ask the lawyers about the litigation side. But it certainly would be wonderful for the country moving forward to be able to roll back that bureaucratic overreach that has been going on for the past 2 years.
We are visiting with Carson Steelman from Heritage Action. Carson, when it comes to the actual votes that we're talking about that were scheduled this past week in the House, Republicans control that. I don't think there's a big chance that the Senate Democrats are going to say, yep, we're going to go ahead and vote to end the national emergency declaration against the president's will. Why is it important to have this on the docket and on the agenda and have a vote on it if the political chances aren't that great?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think the answer is that the American people are expecting conservatives with their new majority in the House to be really serious about laying the groundwork and setting out a vision for policy to contrast their vision with that of the Democrats in the Senate and President Biden and his administration. Because I think what you saw in the midterms in this past year was that voters didn't feel like conservative candidates truly had a vision in a lot of cases, not in all. But I think that this is an amazing opportunity for the conservatives to say, hey, this is what we stand for. This is what the American people overwhelmingly stand for. The American people, they want to move on from COVID too. They want to see the economy recover, workers return to the workplace, and they want to see oversight investigations bring accountability for the fraud and waste that has come as a result of the Democrats and the left wing's reckless policies from this. So I think this is something that even if it is an uphill battle, it's really important for conservatives to stay firm and stay united in pushing for, not only this, but, generally rein in spending. They have the debt ceiling debate and negotiations coming up. So even if Republicans, are dealing with the Senate and the White House, this is still an amazing opportunity to set themselves up for success in 2024 and push Democrats to take a stand, go on the record and say that they don't believe that COVID is over, because I think that's going to wake up a lot of American people who are not on the same page with the left.
You just mentioned the debt ceiling, and obviously there was a meeting with Speaker McCarthy and President Biden. The White House instructing Congress, raise the debt ceiling. There's no negotiations, just do it. Turns out the House Republicans weren't quite on board with that lack of separation of powers. Why is it so important for there to be some kind of reforms as far as the debt ceiling goes? Because what media and Democrats are saying, Carson, is we could be defaulting on some of our debts, and that is terrible for the country. We just got to raise it to be, of all things, fiscally responsible. Why is it so crucial to hit the debt ceiling limit and make changes now?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that you have to necessarily default on the debt to make good changes to the spending process. Over the last few years, the Democrats' out of control spending packages have sent this country into crippling debt. And they want just, a green light to keep doing stuff like that. So I think that as we talk about the debt ceiling, we need to make sure that spending cuts are a part of that. And it should be dollar for dollar. They should cut spending and they should only raise the debt ceiling by the amount that they can cut spending. And you know what? That's where the American people stand on the issue too. A majority of them, according to several different polls, they don't want to see the debt ceiling be increased without any sort of spending cut associated with that. So President Biden coming out and saying that the debt ceiling should be raised with no conditions is completely ridiculous. It's not where the American people are, and it's not good for the fiscal health and economic future of this country.
One of the vote that was scheduled this past week had to do with taking a stand on socialism in Congress. What was it that was on the agenda in Congress to vote on?
Yeah, it was a really straightforward resolution. Similar resolutions have been introduced in previous Congresses, and I'm really happy to have seen this one get a vote. It basically just condemned socialism. That's all it did. So every single Democrat who voted against that resolution, that speaks, volumes about what they think. This should be plain and simple, really straightforward. We have several South Florida members of Congress who have really thriving Cuban communities in their districts. And a lot of those folks have fled the horrors of socialism. So they understand firsthand what socialism really looks like. So, I think it was great that it got a vote. And I think the folks who voted against it, we really need to hold them accountable for failing to speak out against socialism. That's kind of like 101 in my book on a vote that you should definitely support.
All right. And Carson, where do we get in touch with Heritage Action and what you all do?
Yes. So our website is heritageaction.com, and we are on every single social media platform you can pretty much imagine. And all of those handles are linked on our website. We also have a Sentinel program, which is our army of grassroots activists across the country, and they engage on issues at the state and federal levels. They contact their lawmakers regularly. And you can get more information, join the program by texting join to 51776.
All right, Carson, appreciate the update. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for having me.
I'm turning things over to Paul Kurtman. He's going to be here in just about 4 minutes on 101.9 and 94.1 News Talk STL.
This is News Talk STL at 101.9, 94.1, 99.1 HD3 and newstalkstl.com.
And Katie.
Join us on Wednesday for State of the Union reaction from the Insider's Insider, Rodney Boyd at 2:20. Then we'll open up Close's Cabinet with Mark Close and Skip Weber at 3:05.
Weekdays at 2
on News Talk STL.
Hey, it's Tim Jones, and I want to tell you about View 17. You hear me talk about it all the time as one of the area's unique premier event spaces. We have had many events there ourselves. View 17 is located on the 17th floor of the old U Club Tower in Brentwood with a second-to-none view of the city. It's an ultra-modern media, conference, and event space, perfect for corporate events, birthday parties, anniversaries, or even weddings. View 17 will make your event one that people will talk about later. Check it out at VUE17.com. The minute you walk in, you know the space is like no other. VUE17.com.
The Vic Porcelli Show.
Kudos to you guys. I'm not kidding you. Real quick, I got to plug your show because one of my friend's moms goes, I hear you every Thursday on the Vic Porcelli Show. I love that show because it reminds me of The Five on Fox. She goes, Vic and Ken do such a great job of mixing politics with humor, and they play games, and it's just fun. It's informative, but it's entertaining.
Well, thank her for me.
Vic Porcelli, weekday mornings at 9 on News Talk STL.
News Talk STL is proud to have Doug Voss of Safe Money Radio as part of our lineup each week. Doug has been a staple on St. Louis radio for many years as one of the leading financial experts in the area. You can hear Doug and Safe Money Radio 3 times every weekend on News Talk STL. But in case you miss anything, you can check it all out at DougVossSafeMoneyRadio.com. What else do our listeners need to know, Doug?
Simply put, I focus on helping pre-retirees and retirees build, preserve, and protect retirement assets, and I've been helping my clients solve their insurance and financial needs for the past 33 years. I also strive to educate my clients on how to prepare for retirement, minimize the impact of market volatility on their assets, and deal with the challenges of increased longevity. Call me today at 844-676-SAFE. That's 844-676-7233.
Doug Voss is a registered representative. Securities offered through DHL Securities LLLP, member FINRA and SIPC.
Somewhere around 400 feet off the ground, RPG came through the belly of the aircraft. When I first got out, I felt like my whole life had been smushed down to just medical appointments. I was going to occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech therapy. We don't talk about the female combat wounded. These are our daughters and our sisters and our mothers. I'm not sure I would still be here if I didn't find the Friends and Wounded Warrior Project that I did. Because there was a long period after the injury where I really didn't understand why I was still here. I felt like I had lost everything. Wounded Warrior Project came into my life and taught me how to stand back up and get back in the fight. The truth is, I think we all have this strength inside of us, but until you're tested, you just don't know it's there.
See how Wounded Warrior Project empowers women veterans like Beth by visiting woundedwarriorproject.org/empowerwomenvets.
When the world's endangered animals need help most, when their lives are at greatest risk, when they would otherwise be lost, the International Fund for Animal Welfare is there, taking action to rescue the animals we love, to protect them and their threatened natural habitats. But the danger to animals the world over is growing, and the need for your help has never been more urgent. On land, you'll help stop poachers from threatening and killing elephants and big cats for the illegal wildlife trade. In the oceans, you'll help rescue dolphins, whales, and seals from deadly hazards. And you'll help rescue, rehabilitate, and release vulnerable animals when disasters strike. Here at home and around the world, we can't do this work without you. See how you can help animals and people thrive together at joinifall.org.
Conservative talk for St. Louis.
It's your patriotic right and duty. The government needs to step up and do its job.
This is News Talk STL.
It's well-balanced conversation.
News, analysis, opinion.
Hey, it's Joe Pags. Catch me tonight at 7 o'clock. But right now, back to more of Mike Ferguson in the morning on News Talk STL.
And good morning, St. Louis. Welcome to the Mike Ferguson in the Morning Show. This is Paul Kurtman filling in for Mike. Mike will be back later this week. Won't you, Stel?
I hope so. I think so. I mean, not that you're gonna be great here. You get a chance to give us your perspective on everything that went on last night.
I'm glad to be able to be here the morning after the State of the Union address. Really, really kind of an honor to be able to be on some conservative talk radio the morning after Joe Biden gives his State of the Union address. So we're going to have lots to unpack throughout the day. And what's great is we're going to have a number of great guests joining us this morning. Just right about 6:05, we're going to be joined by Phil Kerpen. This guy is a free market policy analyst. So Joe Biden made a lot of claims last night related to the economy and to the market, so Phil's going to be joining us. Phil Kerpen will be joining us just after the 6 o'clock hour. But we're also going to be hearing from Brad Slager in the 8 o'clock hour from Red State. Brad Slager from Red State will unpack a little bit of Biden's State of the Union address. But then at 7 o'clock, so I'm kind of doing this in kind of a back-and-forth order here, but at 7 o'clock, no, it's not 7 o'clock. When is Brian? Brian's going to be on at 6:30.
Yeah, 6:35.
6:35. Brian Keelan from Freedom Principles, Missouri. And we're going to talk about some state issues because the legislature just came back into session just about 3 or 4 weeks ago. And so we're going to talk with Brian Keelan about some of the issues going on in the state. But I've been excited to be able to be in here with you, Stel. You send some great links. And I don't always respond because I'm busy with all the kids and everything else, but I see these amazing links that you send to me that come across the cell phone.
You're welcome.
And so we're gonna talk about some of these today.
Okay. I don't expect you to respond. That's okay.
I'm I do. Sometimes it all depends. Like I don't know. Sometimes I don't know if I'm getting a text that's going out to a lot of people or if it's just coming to me. And so I don't always know. But you sent me this text that I saw, and I immediately forwarded it on to my wife. And that is that Missouri is in the top 10 for Bigfoot sightings in America.
That was an amazing stat.
That is amazing. And
my wife always jokes about that because she lived in Hannibal for a few years, and it seemed as though Bigfoot is a kind of a big deal up there for some reason. So,
Momo.
I thought you'd get a kick out of that. Yes.
Isn't that like from Louisiana, Missouri, which is just north
south.
or south of Hannibal?
Just south of Hannibal. Yeah. You're right. Yep.
Yeah. My wife listens every now and then. She'll catch a Bigfoot podcast. It's just interesting that all these people have seen something out there, but we don't really have any like real evidence. So when you sent that link, I was like, we should talk about that. We'll talk about it with Gabe because he's a scientist. That'd be a fun conversation.
Yeah, he'll give us a scientific perspective.
A scientific perspective.
Bigfoot.
Yeah, and through a conservative lens, we'll talk about Bigfoot. But also, we're going to do this every hour this morning. We're going to do it 6 o'clock hour, 7 o'clock hour, 8 o'clock hour. Joe Biden's speech last night, State of the Union address. This is man, I mean, where do you start? Because you could start with the things that he said, the statements that and claims that he made, and we're going to do a lot of fact-checking this morning. So Joe Biden has basically helped prepare this morning's show.
Your legislative mind had to be spinning last night, boy.
My legislative mind, in my mind that works with numbers. When I think about the economy, when I think about inflation and jobs and all the different data that gets poured into these numbers that get spit out at us to tell us whether or not the economy is doing good or it's doing bad. So I'm excited to talk to Phil Kerpen about this a little bit. I want to talk to him a little bit about inflation and the student loan spending and all this stuff that's contributing to the economy and some of these claims that Biden made. But man, when I was watching that State of the Union address, I feel like over the last 10 years or so, we've lost a lot of the civility that we used to have in the State of the Union addresses. Like there's a lot more shouting down. There's a lot more booming. It's almost like you're going to a local sports game.
Or my other thought was the English Parliament. Because Parliament over there, they get a bit rowdy.
Yeah, and in Canada, too.
Yes, you're right.
Like these parliamentarian bodies, because they have both sides that literally sit and face each other. Like they're in a gymnasium. Like there's the home team and the away team.
Exactly.
And they face each other, and they do a lot of their politicking by trying to deliver like real pithy one-liners. And everybody just like applause or boos. But like in Congress, I feel like when I think about my life paying attention to politics, that it's never quite been that way in the U.S. Congress. But I would be wrong if I said it's never been that way because there was a time in the U.S. Congress where people would get beat. Have you ever heard the story about in the House of Representatives? We also have one in Jefferson City. There's there's a job called the Sergeant at Arms, and this is the person who's basically, if someone's in violation of the rules and they need to be brought into order, Sergeant at Arms can be used for that. The Sergeant at Arms can be sent around to get members of the House and bring them in. They just do a lot of different things. But I think in Washington, D.C., one of our listeners might know this story better, but there was a club. They would actually have a club with them. And at one point, one of the members of the House of Congress, I want to say he grabbed this club, or maybe he just picked up somebody else's cane and almost beat another member to death.
Oh, my.
In the chamber of the U.S. House of Representatives. So, when we watch television and we see people booing and shouting and heckling, it seems like, oh my goodness, the country is just devolving. But folks, it's been a lot worse in the past. In fact, at one time, the country was at war with itself, like literal war, right? The Civil War. So when we see this kind of thing, we actually have it a lot better than a lot of other countries do. You ever seen these? They have their State of the Union addresses, basically, or they have these big speeches over in Asia, and they break out into fights, like people doing martial arts, like drop kicking things and spinning roundhouse kicks. It's crazy what other countries do. Anyway, we're going to unpack a lot of this. We're going to talk with Phil Kerpen here in just a few minutes when we come back at 6 o'clock to unpack a little bit of the State of the Union address. So make sure you stick around for that, and we'll be back right here, 101.9, 94.1 News Talk STL.
What happens next? When it's important to you, stay informed. It's on News Talk STL.
My heart goes out to the Tyree Nichols family.
Difficult to watch that evil that we saw.
Promised to end Title 42. He's now expanding restrictions on asylum seekers.
News, analysis, and opinion.
He's acknowledging now it is his laptop.
Classified documents.
This was a cover-up.
Are you taking advantage of inflation? No, because it was already there when I got here, man.
101.9 and 94.1 News Talk STL.
Hi, Jen Wallner here. As a former foster child myself, I have always been an advocate for foster children in our community. Angels Arms is an amazing organization that provides a stable, nurturing, and loving family environment for these children. They ensure these children have not only the childhood they deserve, but the resources needed to become successful, thriving adults. I truly believe that this organization is transforming lives, and I could not be more proud to be a small part of that accomplishment. For more information or to get involved, visit angelsarms.org.
Hey, it's Vic. Everyone here at News Talk STL is incredibly grateful for the growth in our business during the first 18 months since we signed on the air. We appreciate the great local businesses like Southern Armory, Rhino Shield, Steph's Pizza, and the Wallner team that have become one of our many advertising partners. If your business is interested in becoming part of the News Talk STL family, simply send an email to info@newstalkstl.com. We have a wide variety of affordable advertising options. And thanks for listening to News Talk STL. Welcome home.
For $1 a day, if any covered appliance breaks in your home, we guarantee to fix or replace it. All makes and models, washers, dryers, refrigerators, air conditioners, and more. Guaranteed to be fixed or replaced for $1 a day. Call the Home Service Club now for free information.
800-399-3701. 800-399-3701. 800-399-3701. That's 800-399-3701.
KLGY HD3 Clayton, K270BW Bellefonte, KNBS Bowling Green. This is News Talk STL at 101.9, 94.1, and always streaming at newstalkstl.com.
News this hour from townhall.com. I'm Rich Thomason. They are having none of it. Republicans outraged by President Biden's claim in last night's State of the Union speech that the GOP wants to cut Medicare and Social Security.
I'm not politely not naming them, but it's being proposed by some of you.
That bringing cries of liar, most notably from GOP firebrand Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia. Republicans also taking issue with Mr. Biden's claim that he is strong on defense.
The president says he sent a message by shooting down that Chinese spy balloon last week.
China threatens our sovereignty. We will act to protect our country, and we did.
But in the GOP response, it was Arkansas Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders.
President Biden's weakness puts our nation and the world at risk.
And she insists whether the threat comes from near or far away.
President Biden is unwilling to defend our border, defend our skies, and defend our people.
The situation Sanders described as dangerous and unacceptable. Bob Agnew reporting.
Amid the death and devastation in earthquake-ravaged Turkey and Syria, miraculous stories of survival, inspiring stories of the rescue of quake victims.
The moment a family of 6 is pulled from the rubble by rescue workers in Idlib in northern Syria. A huge crowd ignites with joy, chanting "God is great," as a little girl is carried to an ambulance. But these stories are the exception, and there is mounting despair.
The BBC's Tom Bateman, Town Hall News, joining forces with international nonprofit relief agency Food for the Poor to rush emergency relief, food and water to victims of the earthquakes in Turkey and Syria. More information is available on the website srnnews.com. On Wall Street this morning, Dow futures are down 125 points. The NASDAQ futures off 35 points. More on these stories at townhall.com.
And it's Prager here. Sue and I mean it. Dogs are part of our family. We love Otto and Snoopy so much. There's nothing quite like their loyal companionship. So we provide them with Rough Greens. In fact, I just talked to my wife about it because we want them to be healthy and we want them to be with us as long as possible. That's true. I know Sebastian Gorka feels the same way.
The Pragers and I couldn't agree more. Our pups, Killian and Leia, rely on us to provide what's best for them. And naturopathic Dr. Dennis Black has packed Rough Greens full of vitamins, minerals, digestive enzymes, omega oils, and more that supplement their food in a way that has shown us great results. Trying out Rough Greens is an easy yes, recommended by me, Dr. G.
Naturopathic Dr. Dennis Black here, and I'm so proud that the Pragers and Sebastian Gorka have entrusted their dog's health to Rough Greens. I'm so confident that Rough Greens can help your dog, I'm offering you a free Jumpstart trial bag. Just cover the shipping. Yes, your dog's food is dead food, but you can bring it back to life with Rough Greens. Go to RUFF Greens.
From the Michaels Flooring Outlet Weather Center.
A dry, chilly morning in St. Louis. Temperatures in the mid to upper 30s and cloudy skies. But by lunchtime, rain will be surging in from the north with scattered showers and a few thunderstorms possible as we go through the evening. And there's even a low risk of severe storms east and south of St. Louis and from St. Louis east and south. Overnight lows tonight in the low 40s. The high on Thursday, 52 degrees under partly cloudy skies. Gets a little breezy. I'm KMOV First Alert meteorologist Kent Earhart.
This hour of News Talk STL is brought to you by Rodney and Jen Wallner and the entire Wallner home selling team at Berkshire Hathaway. Call them today at 314-810-SOLD. 314-810-SOLD.
Life insurance is one of those things that just about everybody needs, but few people actually have. Hey, if you die unexpectedly without life insurance, guess what? You'll leave your family with even a bigger mess. Life insurance will help replace your family's income. It'll help cover burial expenses. Life insurance can even help pay off debt like credit cards and medical bills. Life insurance can even pay for college. And if you own a business and you die, life insurance can help your business from collapsing. It can even help cover estate taxes. Life insurance has never been more affordable and needed. Plus, you can always shop around even if you have a plan and save some money. So call the Life Insurance Quote Line right now for free pricing information.
800-979-3060. 800-979-3060. 800-979-3060. That's 800-979-3060.
The balloon has violated U.S. airspace and international law.
News, analysis, opinion.
China should be stood up to.
Was that your laptop?
For real, I don't know.
Is there a Russian plan?
1019 and 94.1 News Talk STL. Mike Ferguson.
Just because you're offended, it doesn't mean you're right.
Gabe Pfeiffer.
I love Jesus. He was my superhero.
Get up! Get up! Can't you hear the alarm?
Twitter is like being able to read every toilet wall in the world.
Mike Ferguson in the morning on News Talk STL.
Get up! Get up! This is your cousin
And good morning, St. Louis. This is Paul Kurtman filling in for Mike Ferguson this morning on the Mike Ferguson in the Morning show here at News Talk STL. And if you were tuned in just before the 6 o'clock hour, right there at about 5:45 or so, I just kind of got into just a little bit about what the State of the Union address had in it and all that we're going to be unpacking throughout the morning. So make sure you stick around, whether it's this hour, next hour, the 8 o'clock hour. There's just so much to talk about. We're going to be talking about this here with Stell, with Gabe Pfeiffer also here in just a few minutes. But right now, joining us on the line is somebody who I'm really excited to talk to about some of the things that we heard in last night's State of the Union address, and that is Phil Kerpen from American Commitment. And Phil, thank you so much for joining us this morning. You have recently written some articles that speak to President Biden's plans to spend money, bail out student loans. And I just have got to get your thoughts on Biden's some of his claims last night about all the great things that he's doing for the economy. First, how are you this morning, and what can you give us about your first thoughts about President Biden's speech last night?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on the show. I thought it was, it was a speech that I think that liberal Democrats really enjoyed, and he read it reasonably competently for him. He only swallowed his lines, 5 or 6 times, something like that, which is pretty good for him for a prompter speech of that length. But the content of it was, how shall I say this, mostly untrue, not accurate, false. I think for people who've really been paying attention, it was incredible the number of times he asserted things that were simply untrue. And, for instance, he said that his Inflation Reduction Act is lowering utility bills. Do you know anyone who's got a lower utility bill? Everyone I know has them going up. He was talking about, he said in his COVID section, he said we opened our country back up. He still has a travel ban. 3 billion people who aren't vaccinated can't come to this country. And he wrote a letter to Congress yesterday saying he opposed a bill to lift that. Yesterday. Last week he opposed making federal employees go back to work and ending the national emergency. And he's like, we opened our country back up. It's like, really? And why are you threatening to veto all these bills? What are you talking about? And, I think there were a lot of other examples of him just asserting things that it just didn't ring true at all. Obviously, he had his ridiculous line about McDonald's makes you sign a non-compete that you'll never work at Burger King. That, of course, is like a total lie. He ad-libbed that in there. I think he was confused. And then he had a whole list of, all the things he wanted to put price controls on, where he just sounded like a cranky old man. He's like, hey, get rid of baggage fees and there are surcharges on hotels. And you're like, where? That's what he thinks is the big problem for the American people? So, it was one of these, I think his partisans liked it. I think that people kind of on our side of the aisle who pay attention to these things were probably pretty infuriated by most of what he said. And, as usual, people in the middle don't usually watch that speech. So, I don't think it has much impact. The other thing that I thought was odd, shall we say, I don't know if you saw this, but the first lady and the second gentleman kissed full on the lips during the greetings of the opening. I don't know if it was one of those things where they didn't, they were going for the cheeks and somebody moved at the last minute or what, but that was a bit of a strange moment. I liked I saw a line on Twitter from Kellyanne Conway. She said, I guess COVID really is over. And she had a picture of the kiss full on the lips.
Well played. Good morning, Phil. Gabe Pfeiffer here. You mentioned that those of us who are partisans who watch this thing, nobody's been moved one way or the other. The people who weren't going to like it didn't like it, and the people who were going to like it, no matter what, they liked it. But and then there's the people in the middle. And those are the ones that I'm always concerned about because they're the ones who turn elections, right? And you said they're not really paying attention. Is there a class of that relatively low information voter who might have popped in, and what do you think their response to this would have been?
You know what? I think that the takeaway might have been that back and forth section where it looked like the British House of Commons when he got shouted down when he was saying that Republicans wanted to cut Social Security, and they all said no, we don't, and then he was like, oh, that's good, I learned something, or whatever he said. And kind of right? Wasn't that? That was unusual. That was the one thing that happened that you don't normally see in one of these, and it was kind of took away one of the main Democratic talking points, right? They keep saying this about Republicans. He said it to a room full of all of them, and they all said, no, that's not true. And then he kind of acknowledged that they said that.
And, he came back. He came back. I'm sorry to interrupt, Phil, but this is still here in the studio. He comes back with the comment, the Jean-Pierre comment of contact my office. And I'll send you the information. That was kind of.
He said that about the Burger King line too. It's like, hey, no, it's true. Hey, we'll send it to you. Ask my office. Okay.
Yeah, it's really kind of bizarre.
By the way, there's no state where a non-compete for flipping burgers would be legal. By the way,
right? Yeah,
and non-compete clauses are only legal when they're considered reasonable. And that one would be so obviously unreasonable, it would be completely unenforceable. It would be null and void. And that he doesn't know that at the same time he's pitching this policy, pretty incredible.
And on those non-competes, like even the Supreme Court, like they're really beginning to weed out a lot of these weaker non-competes. Like you said, it seems like they're just not as strong and not as prevalent.
Look, there's got to be a reason for it. Like I said, I mean, you've got to have like access to trade secrets or business processes, stuff where, if you didn't have that non-compete, you could go and set up your own competitor right away, and they'd lose a lot of business. That kind of thing. I mean, are there probably some still where they ask you to sign it and it's unreasonable? Yeah, but those are going to lose in court if someone challenges them. So, I mean, the idea that this is, again, just the sense of priorities is very odd. And, you mentioned student loans in the intro. He didn't even really mention that he's trying to make taxpayers pay for all the student loans. I thought that was in the end. And there was hardly any foreign policy also. Did you notice that? Mm-hmm. It was like, Ukraine, stand up. Yeah, I'm tough on China. And then everyone's kind of like laughing about the balloon. And then he's like, okay, I'm done with foreign policy. And you're like, really? There's nothing happening in the rest of the world? Okay.
I want to ask you about these student loans, though, because you put out an article recently about his second student loan bailout. And the title is Biden's Second Student Loan Bailout Scheme is Even Worse. I think a lot of people probably don't even really know that he's already pushing towards this second student loan bailout. Can you explain a little bit about what that is?
Yeah, well, it's kind of amazing that it's kind of amazing that he is, because we still don't know if the first one is legal or not. The Supreme Court's hearing that case on February 28th. So, it's like we're a few weeks away from the court even hearing the arguments on the first one, and he's got the second proposal already out. And by the way, they're taking official public comment on this new proposal for 2 more days. So if you think it sounds terrible, or even if you think it sounds good and you want to weigh in on it, you got 2 more days to do that. And we actually have a form up on our website, AmericanCommitment.org, where you can take our model comment, edit it however you want, and we'll deliver it into the docket for you. But basically the proposal is to make taxpayers pick up the cost of a student loan payment for basically at least half of the cost, and probably more than that for lower-paying majors in particular. And the way this works is you would only have to pay, the person who took out the student loan would only have to pay a maximum of 5% of their income above 225% of the federal poverty level. So, 225% of the federal poverty level is like $65,000 a year. If you make less than that, you make 0 student loan payments. If you make more than that, then however much more than that you make, that's for a family of 4. If you make more than that, then the difference between that and what you make, you'll pay 5% of that on a monthly basis, and that's it. And at the end of 10 years or 20 years, depending on the amount you borrowed, taxpayers pick up the full balance, and no interest accrues while you're paying this. And you look at this laid out, and Brookings Institution, which is a liberal think tank, it's totally against this plan, says more than 50 cents of every dollar of student loan debt gets paid by taxpayers under this plan. So the people who actually take out the loans pay less than half. And it's actually even more perverse than that, because it's the lower value majors where you're never going to make enough money to have to make payments. Those become free college. So if you go study something that is not very valuable in terms of the income it produces, taxpayers pick up the full cost. If you study something higher value where you're going to make more money, then you probably end up paying back your loan. So it actually subsidizes the lowest value degrees the most. It basically turns them into, free college at taxpayer expense. And it also will lead to tuitions rising pretty dramatically, especially for graduate programs where there's no limit on how much you can borrow. Because if you imagine the graduate school deans and the administrators, they're going to look at this and they're going to be able to say to their students, look, you're going to make this capped payment no matter what. So, we should just jack the tuition up to the moon, and we can get, build new luxury buildings and add this, add the other thing into the experience. And don't worry, taxpayers are going to pick up the full cost of the increase. And so I think it's an incredibly poorly conceived plan. It's going to cost hundreds of billions, possibly even trillions of dollars for taxpayers. And of course, like his other plan, there's really no legal basis for doing this. It goes far beyond anything in the law on income-driven repayments. But it's not clear who will be able to sue. And so maybe they think they can get away with it, as they did with the first attempt. So that's basically how it works. As I said, there's more information on AmericanCommitment.org, and we also have a form there where if you want to write into them, they are taking comments for 2 more days on that.
Phil, what do you make of the debt ceiling fight?
Well, I thought it was pretty remarkable. The paragraph we got on it last night, he basically said, we added trillions of dollars of debt in the last Congress, record debt, and of course he was referring to all the COVID spending, and he was kind of trying to blame Trump for it, even though all the Democrats voted for it, and most of the programs in those bills were Democrat programs more than they were Republican programs, just massive, massive spending. And then he said, hey, and we jacked up the debt ceiling, no problem, so we should do that again. And it's like, well, no, that was a problem. I'm watching this. I'm like, no, that was bad that they did that. We should not do that again. We should change the course that we're on so that we don't have a debt crisis in this country in the next, years to decades. We've got to do something to fix federal spending being out of control. So I thought it was a little bit ridiculous what he said. I think it's good that he sat down with Speaker McCarthy and at least started a negotiation, which means he was lying all the times he said he wouldn't negotiate. And I think they've got to do something to change the course of federal spending. It's unsustainable. The debt is unsustainable. We're already about 100% of GDP, which is where you start to have economic drag. And if they don't change anything in a couple of decades, it's going to double. Yep. And that is going to be a huge burden on our economy in the future and risks a potential Greece-style crisis meltdown. So, look, I don't know what Republicans are going to be able to accomplish with just the House. And, at the end of the day, they're going to raise the debt ceiling because nobody up there's got the stomach to balance the budget this year, which is what you would have to do to not take on more debt. But I sure hope they do something to change the path that we're on, because this line from Democrats that the debt's not a problem, the problem is the ceiling. Yeah. I mean, this is insane. Like in Neverland, it's like, well, what are you talking? You know what it would be like? It would be like you were running a business and you were like taking huge losses every day, and you had millions of dollars in debt, and you went to the bank and said, I want to borrow more money. And they said, oh, really? What's your plan to turn things around? I have no plan. I'm not changing anything. Just give me more. Like, you'd get laughed out of it. That's basically what the Democrats are saying to the American people.
Yep. Hey, Phil, we got to run here in just a minute, but we want to thank you for coming and helping us kind of kick off the show with kind of unpacking some of that State of the Union address. Where can people find you online?
The best place where I was saying all this stuff and, my stream of consciousness is my Twitter feed. It's my last name, Kerpen, Kerpen. And if you want to actually well thought out stuff, you go to our website, AmericanCommitment.org.
All right, AmericanCommitment.org. Thanks so much, Phil. That's Phil Kerpen from American Commitment, and I would highly recommend you give him a follow on Twitter. Go check out his website. And we're going to take a break here in just a moment, but when we come back, Gabe and Stel, we're going to start breaking down some of these claims that Biden made last night. So this will be kind of fun and also terrifying at the same time when we start doing this. So make sure you stick around. Be back as we start doing that here at 101.9, 94.1 News Talk STL.
We give you news, analysis, opinion, and more. Only on News Talk STL. Get up. It's Mike Ferguson in the morning.
Stories of New Americans.
Hi, this is Ron Clutho. Join me this weekend for Stories of New Americans, where you'll hear fascinating and inspirational personal stories of people from all over the globe who now call St. Louis home. We'll take a look at the U.S. through newcomers' eyes and get insight into world history and culture, and maybe just learn a little bit more about ourselves.
Stories of New Americans with Ron Clutho. Saturday nights at 10 on News Talk STL.
Tim Jones and Chris Arps in the afternoon.
I'm sick of all the firsts. It's after we had the first black president and maybe a couple more first. I'm tired of it.
Now it's the best person.
Yeah, now it's hey, this person is, I think Gabe said, this is the first left-handed transgender person with red hair thing. We're scraping the barrel now for first, so that it doesn't mean anything anymore.
Tim Jones and Chris Arps. Weekdays at 3:30 on News Talk STL.
Just like golf, investing your money can be tricky. Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft here. When market downturns happen, investors are tempted with products that promise to guard against inflationary sand traps. From coins to cryptocurrency and everything in between, always research the investment before you write the check. Visit MissouriProtectsInvestors.com for more information. That's MissouriProtectsInvestors.com.
paid for by Investor Education and Protection Fund.
I'm Susie Moore, and this is More to the Point. I don't mean to be a downer, but as I record this commentary on Tuesday afternoon, Joe Biden is set to give his second State of the Union address this evening. While there's no way to predict the specifics of the speech, one thing I'm fairly comfortable predicting is that it will contain a few flubs, several lies, and tons of spin. To be completely fair, one might contend that's true of most presidential addresses, at least as to the spin part. Flubs may vary depending on the speaker's eloquence, and lies seem to rest in the eyes or ears of the beholder. Either way, I suspect few people look to a State of the Union address for education or enlightenment. Mostly it's a chance to either cheer your champion or jeer your opposition, perhaps an excuse to pop some popcorn and come up with a drinking game of some sort. I would submit that far more important than the State of the Union is the fate of the Union, because these days it doesn't seem nearly so secure as we once took for granted it was. Some of that I attribute simply to getting older and becoming more jaded, but it's hard to take a clear-eyed look at present circumstances and not feel concerned about what the future holds, particularly with leadership that instills little confidence or cause for optimism. We could really use a dose of both right about now.
Susie Moore is Deputy Managing Editor for RedState.com. For more to the point and everything Susie Moore, log on to RedState.com. Follow Susie on Twitter at SmoozyQ and keep listening to 1019 and 94.1 News Talk STL.
St. Louis's new choice for conservative talk.
Listen to this noise coming out of the White House.
Live and local.
We need to get the message to people who are not being helped by Democrats.
Ron DeSantis showed people the back of his hand.
This is News Talk STL. This hour of Mike Ferguson in the Morning is brought to you by Stifel. Request a portfolio review from your Stifel financial advisor at stifel.com. That's STIFEL.com. Like and subscribe to us on Rumble. News Talk STL. Get up. It's Mike Ferguson in the morning.
But first, watching US President Joe Biden deliver the State of the Union address today, it makes you shake your head at not the State of the Union, but at the state of the White House in the United States. I mean, the notion that Joe Biden, at his age and cognitive state, would do another 4-year term should, I think, send shockwaves around the world. And the notion that Donald Trump will run again makes most people equally nervous. Now, watching the US president, and this gives me no comfort, I was sitting there on my couch waiting for Joe Biden to make a mistake, to get someone's name wrong, to lose his place on the auto queue. That's a natural reaction with this bloke these days. But what an awful thing to think about someone holding that great office, the office that had great orators like John F. Kennedy and Barack Obama. How low has that office sunk? And tradition has it that this address gets some degree of bipartisanship. Well, it didn't get that today. When President Biden took a swipe at the Republicans over health care, he got back as good as he gave.
Instead of making the wealthy pay their fair share, some Republicans want Medicare and Social Security to sunset. I'm not saying it's a majority. Let me give you, anybody who doubts it, contact my office. I'll give you a copy. I'll give you a copy of the proposal. That means Congress doesn't vote. Well, I'm glad.
Now,
there you have it. Welcome back to the to Mike Ferguson in the morning. This is Paul Kurtman filling in for Mike. Gabe Pfeiffer is here. Stella's here. And two things to kind of kick off as we begin to unpack this. First off, around the world, people watch the State of the Union address. I could care less about the annual speeches that they have to give every year in the British Parliament. I don't watch them.
Sure.
But those people watch our State of the Union address.
Oh, yeah.
This guy sounds like he's from Australia.
Yep.
So you got people in Australia. They're watching the State of the Union address. They're going to see what's going on. Everybody has their eyes on America. And this is not the first time that we've seen news commentators begin to say, what in the world is going on in the Joe Biden White House? specifically Joe Biden. Here we have somebody saying, I sat on my couch and I was waiting for him to just start making mistakes.
Oh yeah, he basically said out loud what all of us are thinking, because and it is interesting that we're getting all this international response from this. That maybe you didn't know, but yes, everybody pays a whole lot of attention to American politics, especially in fellow Western countries, Australia, UK, all these places, and also in Europe. So and I think some of these commentators out of Australia, they've been taking it to Joe Biden since almost day one. Like they were not afraid or they were not trying to pull any punches in responding to what they were seeing out of the White House, and much more honest commentary, I guess, on his state of mind and his capacities, his apparent capacities, coming out of Australia than in our own media. So I'm not surprised that it was an Australian who had that clip, but I mean, gosh, come on, guys, it's obvious what's going on.
And in that clip too. So in that particular clip where Biden is speaking, and this is what our last guest, Phil Kerpen, was talking about, where Biden makes the claim Republicans want to sunset Social Security and Medicare. And to help people understand what it means when the legislature sunsets something, it means they let it expire, and in order to bring it back, they have to have a vote to keep it going.
Right.
So there are two members of the U.S. Senate that are Republicans, and they put together, not necessarily proposals, but basically, here's everything that could be on the table if we're going to have serious discussions about reining this in. And I think it was Ron Johnson from Wisconsin and Rick Scott from Florida. And so in their documents that they put together, among a host of ideas, they were just collecting ideas. They said, well, what we could do is we could have sunsets, which would force the legislature to have a deeper conversation, because then we actually have to have a vote to keep it going.
Right.
Which is actually a pretty good device whenever you want to make sure that you force legislators to the table to have a deeper discussion. You say you're going to have to vote yes or no to continue this. And so the proposal to keep it going forward is probably going to look different than the way it is right now. It's actually a pretty common device. We use it in Jefferson City all the time.
Yeah, it's a process piece of legislation, as opposed to a proposal about what programs should and should not continue. It's a process change that they're looking to accomplish there, and it would probably politically look very similar to the debt ceiling fight, right?
It would look like a continuing resolution.
Yeah,
mostly.
Exactly. So there's a limitation. Okay, here's how long this goes. Okay, now we have to talk about it again, and as kind of circusy as it can get sometimes with the continuing resolutions and things like that. At the very least, it forces a different type of conversation than the one that we've been having about all of these programs.
Well, you know what? You bring up the word conversation, and Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, because, Gabe, conversation is something that's not been going on in the U.S. Congress. Paul, you say that it does happen in Jeff City. And that's one huge difference to me, is since Pelosi got in, all of a sudden we didn't see any conversation about legislative bills. It was just, here's the bill, you've got 12 hours to read it and vote on it.
Yeah, here's the bill that is 1,000 pages long. And the thing is I would encourage the listeners, folks, if you should go to your congressman's website. Look at the legislation they're introducing. Not because to find out what they're doing. You should know that also. But just look at what a bill looks like. Mostly, whenever someone introduces legislation, it's like 500 pages of amendments to other legislation. So to really understand what's going on, you have to read this bill, and you have to have all the other laws, so then you can flip to them and see how their legislation changes current legislation. It is an incredibly time-consuming process. So when you only have 12 hours to look at something, or in some cases they don't even distribute the bill, which I don't know how they get away with that.
Yeah.
Not even distributing a bill until like the last minute or until just an hour before they're supposed to vote on it. One thing that Biden said in this clip was he said, "Oh, you don't believe me? Contact my office." I hate it when people say that.
Oh, gosh.
Because they know that most people aren't going to contact their office to get verification from somebody that they already don't trust, right?
Yeah.
But to me, that is the equivalent of saying, oh, just Google it. I made the mistake one time when I was a freshman legislator. I was at a press conference. The Speaker of the House had brought me in to introduce this legislation. I was introducing this legislation, and it was kind of controversial. And some reporters were like, can you give us some examples? And this is my first time.
Oh, okay.
I was not prepared.
You weren't ready.
And I was like, Google it.
Google it.
And somebody did. But what they reported was how they entered the Google query.
Oh, of course. And yeah.
Which didn't give the results as if I had typed in the parameters for what I was searching for, but it made me look like a total fool.
Right.
But this is something that people use, and honestly, if I'm being honest here, and I am, I said that because I wasn't prepared for the debate because I was brand new. I just didn't know. But President Biden's been around a while.
Just a little bit.
Been around a little bit.
Since emancipation, maybe? Somewhere in there.
So to say, you don't believe me, contact my office. Rather than actually, if he really believed what he was going to say, he would. I just told you guys that it was Rick Scott and Ron Johnson, and what they had done was they basically put together some white papers on everything that could be on the table if we're going to have a discussion.
Right,
and that's all that it was. It wasn't a proposal to make a change. It was just an idea for a possibility, if we want to have the conversation, of just changing the process to force us to have a deeper conversation, like you pointed out.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it would have been different, I guess, if he responded, well, ask Rick Scott and or Tim Scott and Rick.
Drop their names.
Drop
their names. I mean, he's so hyper partisan, and he's ready just to light things on fire. Well, then just mention their names. But the reason he won't mention their names is because he doesn't really have the courage of his convictions, because he knows what he's doing is just regular old political spin.
Yeah, I mean, it was narrative buildings, right? It's the same old we've seen time and time again. The Republicans are trying to wheel grandma off a cliff. You know, you remember that ad? I think that was an actual ad during I think it was the Romney year that he was going. There is an ad of a supposed Republican wheeling a grandma off a literal cliff.
It was going after Paul Ryan.
Was it going after Paul Ryan? It was
because he was the budget chairman.
That's right. It was something crazy like that. I mean, that's the narrative, and they're holding on to the narrative. And I mean, because come on, that line came right after the line of, well, they don't want businesses to pay their fair share. So it's all talking points and stupid rhetoric and narrative building, and none of it is actually
in mostly
true.
The State of the Union address. You ever watch an episode of Perry Mason or Matlock, right?
Yeah.
One of these old courtroom shows, Law and Order, whatever. And you'll have the one lawyer who knows I'm going to say something that's absolutely ridiculous, but I just need to get the idea implanted in the mind of the jury.
Yep.
And so they'll stand up and say, well, I don't know why you would do that since you're a child molester. And then somebody will be like, objection. That has no, but
what's wrong?
But the whole point is he was ready to gaslight the whole courtroom because he just wanted to get the seed planted in their mind. You plant enough seeds, nothing might grow, but if one thing sprouts up, then that could change the direction of the outcome of a court case. And so when President Biden is saying things like, the Republicans want to undo Medicare and Social Security, and he's met with all those boos, it's because everybody on the House floor recognized that this guy is trying to gaslight the whole country.
Can't go unchallenged.
And it can't go unchallenged. And so Stella and I were talking about, how some of these parliamentary procedures in Canada and the UK get a little raucous. But sometimes that's necessary when you have somebody willing to tell such a blatant, open lie. Anyway, hey, when we come back, we're going to be talking with Byron Keelan from Freedom Principles, Missouri. We're going to talk about some issues going on in Jefferson City, things that are happening closer to home here in our own state capital. So make sure you stick around right here at 101.9 94.1 News Talk STL.
We give you news, analysis, opinion, and more. Only on News Talk STL. Get up. It's Mike Ferguson in the morning. Listen anytime.
It happens
anywhere. Everywhere.
Every day continues to bring more news
with the News Talk STL app. Keep St. Louis's home for conservative talk with you wherever you go. Download the News Talk STL app in the App Store or at newstalkstl.com. From the Michaels Flooring Outlet Weather Center.
A dry, chilly morning in St. Louis. Temperatures in the mid to upper 30s and cloudy skies. But by lunchtime, rain will be surging in from the north with scattered showers and a few thunderstorms possible as we go through the evening. And there's even a low risk of severe storms east and south of St. Louis and from St. Louis east and south. Overnight lows tonight in the low 40s. The high on Thursday, 52 degrees under partly cloudy skies. Gets a little breezy. I'm KMOV First Alert meteorologist Kent Earhart.
Hey, Columbo here, and many of you know that one of my favorite things to do when I have some free time is to get out on the water and go fishing. And the folks at Bluff City Outdoors in Alton are the people you should see before your next fishing trip. No matter what you're fishing for, they have everything you need, from gear to lures to live bait. Plus, they can even set you up on a guided fishing tour on the Mississippi River. Make sure the tackle box is ready for your next trip by visiting Bluff City Outdoors at 2813 East Broadway in Alton and bluffcityoutdoors.com.
The Herzog Foundation is the vision of its founder, Stanley Herzog, and it exists to promote and accelerate the development of quality Christ-centered K-12 education.
Hi, this is Daryl Jones, president of the Herzog Foundation. Our primary goal is to advance Christian education so that families and culture flourish. The legacy of Stan's business career centers around making national transit ecosystems accessible and sustainable. Likewise, the legacy of Stan's philanthropy centers around making the ecosystems of Christian education more accessible and sustainable for families across the nation. Visit HerzogFoundation.com to learn more about our programs, including trainings, scholarships, conferences, news, and our podcast, Making the Leap.
Visit HerzogFoundation.com to learn more and sign up for The Lion, an initiative of the Herzog Foundation that carries articles covering a wide range of issues facing American families and culture. HerzogFoundation.com.
The news and talk that affects St. Louis.
Was that your laptop? For real, I don't know.
He's acknowledging now it is his laptop.
This is 101.9 and 94.1.
The border is dangerous, fentanyl traffickers, and violent criminals.
News Talk STL.
Hey, Bill O'Reilly here, and you can hear my no-spin commentary right here at 6:45 this evening. Now it's back to Mike Ferguson in the morning on 101.9 and 94.1 News Talk STL.
And welcome back to the Mike Ferguson in the Morning Show. Gabe, Stell, I'm excited to bring on our next guest. We're going to get right to him because I want to talk about some of these things going on in Jefferson City. Talk to him about some of the priorities of Freedom Principle, Missouri. And that is our next guest, Byron Keelan. Byron, thank you so much for joining us this morning on News Talk STL. Let's just go ahead and get right into this. What is the priority of your organization for this legislative session here in 2023? And are you able to make any headway right now, or is there any particular bill that's coming up to the surface that you guys are opposing?
Well, opposing, good morning, and thanks for having me on. I would say opposing is not really the areas that we're focusing on. The issues that we're really focusing on is crime, education reform, and to stop this, promotion of the transgender agenda on our children. And so we really have been active with working with the senators and representatives on this multiple fronts, and trying to manage and corral all of these bills going on in the House and Senate.
Good morning, Byron. Gabe Pfeiffer here. So, what is the top piece of legislation do you think would help in that, or has it been introduced yet, or is there something else that you're looking at?
Yeah, actually, I mean, there's quite a bit. We've seen on the House side, HB 301, which institutes or gives the governor the powers to appoint a special prosecutor for, rogue prosecutors that won't do their job, i.e. Kim Gardner. And so this bill makes it a little bit more easier for the governor to appoint a special prosecutor, to come in and take over and start making cities more safer. The other one is there's two bills. One is Senate Bill 78, which is sponsored by Nick Schroer. That's actually coming for a vote out of committee this morning. So we've been sending out emails to the various senators on the Public Safety Committee there, encouraging them to support Senate Bill 78, which is returning control of the St. Louis City Police back to the state Board of Commissions. There's a hearing tomorrow on the House side in the Crime Prevention and Public Safety Committee at 8 a.m., and they're going to hear like 5 bills regarding control of taking control back from St. Louis City to the State Board of Commissions. So we're encouraging our supporters to contact those representatives and support those bills. A lot of these bills are exactly the same thing, and so they'll eventually just end up as one bill. But the other areas with regard to education, you've got Senate Bill 4, which is offered by Senator Koenig, Parents' Bill of Rights. That's been voted out of committee and is now awaiting discussion and vote on the Senate floor. Senate Bill 81, offered up by Senator Mary Elizabeth Coleman, authorizes parents to, it's a true school choice in that it gives parents the funding to send their kid to school wherever they want to go. And then the other issues that we've really been following are the provisions for constitutional amendment reforms, particularly HJR 30, which has been passed out of the Rules Committee and is awaiting a floor vote.
Byron, I want to go back to one of the topics that you brought up just a minute ago when you were talking about opposing the transgender agenda. And this is something that, when you look at social media, you see handles like Libs of TikTok have done really well to just expose this, quite frankly, a very real agenda. And people really talk about how they're trying to go into these classrooms and influence these kids and confuse them even further, into thinking that we're all really non-binary and whatever. But I think it was last year, maybe the year before, but the Senate Republicans had a vote where they could have done a lot to stop this from happening in the schools, and they didn't. I think it might have had to do with the stopping transgender athletes, stopping biological males from competing on girls' sports teams. How do you approach a situation like that where you have Republicans that should be doing what Republican voters expect them to do, but then at the end of the day you find out that they all just voted against one of our priorities and they seem to be siding with these leftist progressives? How do you approach that situation? Because you have to have the votes to win. So kind of walk us through, how is it that you're planning on addressing that issue with a lot of these Republicans who just have not voted, in accordance with the way we'd like?
Well, I think a lot of it is just education in that, some of these senators and representatives just aren't familiar with what is going on. They might be in the rural areas and not having to deal with this. They might just have a naive approach about that this isn't happening in Missouri. When they testified in the House and Senate on the Save Women's Sports Acts, there's the opponents of those bills came out and said, well, there's only a handful of trans students. Well, it's not that you're not necessarily discriminating against these trans people, is that you're protecting women and you're protecting girls. You're protecting the dignity and the agency of this gender, in a sense, is that the transgender agenda is the dehumanization of women. It is taking away their rights to have, things that are normal, that are their sports, and things. And so what we've done is, we have champions with Senator Mike Moon, with Senator Jill Carter in the Senate. We have, Representative Brian Sykes in the House, and others, particularly Representative Justin Sparks from St. Louis, Representative Holly Jones. All of these individuals are they campaigned on making this happen and protecting women and protecting children from this transgender agenda. And so what we're doing is we now have champions in the House and Senate on both sides, and I think we're going to get these passed. in this session.
One of the things that might hamper those efforts, I imagine, is if ranked choice voting gets in, and our legislative makeup could be changing by way of this kind of strange way of electing officials. Where you guys stand on that, and what is threatening, I guess, our current way of electing officials?
Well, we are totally opposed to anything that takes away the one person, one vote system that we have had since this country was founded. We oppose ranked choice voting. We oppose approval voting. We oppose weighted voting. I know you see Representative Shamed-Dogan, former Rep Shamed-Dogan's now pushing approval voting. We're totally against that kind of thing where the person gets to choose more than one candidate for an office and then has to go to a runoff and stuff. Ranked choice voting really just creates ballot exhaustion. It disenfranchises voters, and we are working with Senator Brown. He just had a hearing on Monday on SJR 30, which would ban ranked choice voting. So we really think that is a strong bill that protects the one person, one vote stance. And it also, specifies that the person that wins their primary is the candidate for their party in a general election. The other thing it does is that it does support paper ballots, and we are advocates of paper ballots. And but ranked choice voting is something. The RNC at its meeting in January came out with a stance opposing ranked choice voting. We don't know why Republican lobbyists seem to be pushing this, other than the fact is that they're using it to make themselves richer by getting more establishment money, or by getting more money from the people like the Chamber of Commerce or Pfizer and things like that to try to get candidates that are weak.
Well, ranked choice voting, in a general election, that's just more candidates that you can have running. So with more candidates running, that are Republicans or Democrats, that's just more consultants that are out raising money, and more money that's being paid to consultants and anybody who's helping put campaigns together. So I can see exactly what you're talking about when you say that having that ranked choice voting, especially in that general election, just brings a lot more money into a race. So there are people that stand to do pretty well.
Well, and you saw what happened with Alaska. You had a very conservative Alaska put in ranked choice voting specifically to protect Lisa Murkowski. And we had a very strong pro-America First candidate running with Kelly Chewbacca, and ranked choice voting defeated this because they were able to manipulate the votes by putting them all in Murkowski's favor. Same thing happened with their House congressional seat, is that Sarah Palin, won, but she didn't get a majority. And then by the time you added in all the other votes, the Democrat took that seat. So imagine what happens in Missouri if you had all of the candidates like Cori Bush and Eric Schmidt and Eric Greitens and all these people running in the same race, because it does away with party labels. And then, do you really want someone like Cori Bush in the United States Senate? I mean, we think John Fetterman is bad. My God, Cori Bush would be a mental disaster for us in Missouri. And that's what will happen if we get ranked choice voting. Our gun rights, our Second Amendment rights, our freedom of speech, any pro-life legislation that we have passed in Missouri will be defeated or watered down because of weak candidates.
Yep. Hey, Byron, we're about ready to be out of time here, but if people want to find out a little bit more about Freedom Principle Missouri, if they want to get a hold of you, if they want to be involved with you or your organization, how can people get a hold of you online, or how can they follow you on social media?
Well, we encourage people to join our organization. It's $30 for an individual membership and $50 for a household membership. They can go to our website at freedomprinciplemmo.org and join. You can also go there and follow us and find us on Twitter. We're on Getter, Truth Social, Telegram, just about every social media platform out there we're on. So I encourage everyone to, like I said, go to freedomprinciplemissouri.org or mo.org and join our organization and help us fight for constitutional solutions to America's biggest challenges.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us, Brian. That was Brian Keelan from Freedom Principle, Missouri. And you can go back and you can follow him online. We're going to be back here in just a couple minutes. And Gabe, we might even carry on this conversation a little bit more because this ranked choice voting is it's interesting to me. Mm-hmm. And I think it can be dangerous in a general election.
Absolutely.
But let's talk about that and a few other things. And over the next couple hours, we're still going to continue to unpack Biden's State of the Union address. Make sure you stick around. We're going to stop the spin and let you know what the truth is about some of these wild claims that he was making. We'll be back here in just a few minutes on the Mike Ferguson Show, 1019, 94.1 News Talk STL.
And take your baby by the hill. Subscribe and watch your favorite News Talk STL shows. Mike Ferguson in the morning.
I got time to finish off my coffee.
Columbo and Katie, Jones and Harps. Webcam streaming on Facebook, Twitter, Rumble. Subscribe and watch News Talk STL.
It's Proctor spelled like doctor for custom window fabrics and shutters. Upgrade or start from scratch. Either way, Michael is the St. Louis expert. Check him out at proctordrapery.com and then call Proctor spelled like doctor for shutters, shades, and draperies.
Proctor Drapery, the best in town. No finer window fashion can be found. Call for an appointment at your home. Spell Proctor like doctor.
Hey, it's Mike Ferguson here. Everybody here at News Talk STL is incredibly grateful for the growth of our business during our first 18 months since we signed on the air. We appreciate the great local businesses like Clear Path Wealth Management, STL Fence Works, and Michael's Flooring that have all become advertising partners. If your business is interested in becoming part of the News Talk STL family, simply send an email to info@newstalkstl.com. Thanks for listening to News Talk STL. Welcome home.
When people have a craving to explore new and traditional Asian cuisines, they head to P.F. Chang's, where scratch-made dishes come from the 2,000-year-old tradition of wok cooking. P.F. Chang's wanted to explore new possibilities for their website. They turned to AmericanEagle.com. AmericanEagle.com re-architected P.F. Chang's website, integrating multiple third-party systems to create a unified digital experience. The results? Improved page speed and performance, personalized content based on users' location, intuitive online ordering, an increase in organic search visibility, and a 40% increase in new users. For scratch-made Asian cuisine, visit your local P.F. Chang's or go to pfchangs.com for website design, development, digital marketing, and hosting that produce efficiency, revenue, and results. Visit AmericanEagle.com. P.F. Chang's and AmericanEagle.com. Another example of the best businesses in the world, turning to the best in the business for websites. Go to AmericanEagle.com or call 877-WEB-NOW1. That's 877-WEB-NOW1.
Tim Jones and Chris Arps in the afternoon.
It's Wednesday. We'll talk about the President's State of the Union address and the political operative.
Tim Jones and Chris Arps. Weekdays at 3:30 on News Talk STL. This hour of Mike Ferguson in the morning is brought to you by Stifel. Request a portfolio review from your Stifel financial advisor at stifel.com. That's STIFEL.com.
Hey, this is Larry Connors. Make sure you're listening later today at 6 o'clock on News Talk STL for my show, Larry Connors USA. Now, back to Mike Ferguson in the morning.
And welcome back. This is Paul Kurtman filling in for Mike Ferguson. He'll be back later, but today I get to fill in for him with Gabe Pfeiffer here and Stella in the studio. And guys, I want to carry on this conversation that we were just having with Byron from Freedom Principle, Missouri. And that is about ranked choice voting. So I had, just from some observations that I've made about elections and campaigning, and just so people, sometimes I like to kind of define these terms, because when you're listening in on the radio and you may not be going to all these meetings where people are talking about this, ranked choice voting is you see 10 people on the ballot, and so you literally write a number next to their name, basically. Mm-hmm. Here's my first pick. Here's my second pick. And what they will do is they will use the process of elimination. Okay, this person got the least amount of people voting for him on the first round. And then you fill out one ballot and they can figure out, where does the majority of support wind up going.
Right.
But the problem with this is in a general election, and he was talking about Murkowski and Sarah Palin, these two races up in Alaska, you can have two Republicans and one Democrat in the race.
Mm-hmm.
And so on the first round, the Democrat can win, even though the majority of voters are Republican.
Right.
And therein lies the danger, because then it allows anybody to just really manipulate who's going to the outcome of an election by making sure that they flood the ballot, knowing full well that you're literally splitting votes. We hear people talk about splitting the ticket.
Yeah.
This is the type of process that most efficiently allows for people to split the ticket. And so if you get more Republicans than Democrats, you might have, it might be because there's more Republicans in the district, but because of that and because there's more Republicans on the ballot, the Democrat winds up winning because you have multiple Republicans on a ballot with a Democrat and only one person can win.
Yeah, I mean, if if you're a Republican state and you kind of have an embarrassment of riches, let's say, in terms of potential candidates who are pretty decent, and you know there are slight nuances between the two that Republican voters would, or you know, maybe split on. It would be, I mean, it's a Republican state having a Republican conversation, but all of a sudden the Democrats can just kind of swoop in and take it just because you guys aren't 100%, you know, simpatico on one candidate.
Let me ask you a question. Real quick. We only got about a minute left. Here's this question. We talk about a lot of Republicans splitting the ticket in the primary.
Yeah.
When you have like one establishment candidate and four grassroots candidates, and they split that ticket.
Right.
I had somebody approach me with the idea of, what if you had a ranked choice voting system, but it was just for a primary, just within the party. That way you could rank your candidates in a primary and actually wind up probably sending the most conservative person to the ballot. Think it's a possibility?
That's interesting.
I thought it was
idea.
interesting
Yeah.
too. So definitely not for a general election, but
maybe for primary.
Maybe
Yeah.
worth a discussion. Hey, we're going to come back here in just a few minutes. At the 7 o'clock hour, we're going to unpack more of Biden's speech. We're going to talk about what Democrats are trying to thwart in Jefferson City. So make sure you stick around that right here. 1019 94.1. This is Paul Kurtman filling in for Mike Ferguson, News Talk STL.
Hey, Pocket Watchers. By now, I know you heard that the IRS is hiring 87,000 more agents. What does that mean? More collections, more audits. If you have a tax problem, unfiled tax returns, a large tax bill that you can't handle, give my office a call, 314-776-9076. I have years of experience of representing clients before the IRS to resolve tax problems. So stop hiding. Sticking your head in the sand is not going to make this go away. Give my office a call, 314-776-9076. Thornton Advisor Group is here to help you. Set up your free consultation to get an understanding of what's going on with your IRS case. Stop ignoring those letters. Give my office a call, 314-776-9076, or visit us online at thorntonadvisor.com.
Are you looking for the cheapest prices on car insurance? Then call the Cheap Car Insurance Hotline right now. Hey, you're guaranteed to save money on your car insurance. Most car insurances can be canceled at any time. That means if you find a better deal, you can switch right away. We're not just one company. We offer most of the major brands of car insurance. We're like a discount supermarket for car insurance. And it doesn't matter if you have a good record or a bad driving record. Our agents are experts at finding you the right car insurance for your needs. Our average customer saves hundreds of dollars a year when they call us to switch. So why don't you make this 100% free call right now and see how much you can save on your car insurance? Paid for by AIS Insurance.
800-721-5741. 800-721-5741. 800-721-5741. That's 800-721-5741.
KLGY HD3 Clayton, K270BW Bellefonte, KNBS Bowling Green. This is News Talk STL at 1019 94.1 and always streaming at newstalkstl.com.
News this hour from townhall.com. I'm Rich Thomason. The Republican take on the Biden record.
Americans want common sense from their leaders.
Sarah Huckabee Sanders.
But in Washington, the Biden administration is doubling down on crazy.
The newly minted Arkansas governor delivering the Republican response to last night's Biden State of the Union speech. The president outraged GOP lawmakers with his claim that Republicans want to cut Social Security and Medicare.
Look, folks.
While at the same time making a pitch for cooperation across the aisle.
The president made the case that much of the nation's important work remains unfinished, and he called on lawmakers, specifically Republicans, to work with him to finish the job.
If we could work together the last Congress, there's no reason we can't work together and find consensus on important things in this Congress as well.
Despite his call for bipartisanship, the president issued some veto threats. In the end, he declared that the State of the Union is strong because the soul, the backbone, and the people of this nation are strong. Greg Clugston, Washington.
The world is responding to the earthquake disaster in Turkey and Syria, where the death toll has topped 11,000. The rescuers continue digging through mountains of rubble, hoping to find more survivors.
The U.S. is coordinating immediate assistance to Turkey. In California, 100 Los Angeles County firefighters and structural engineers, along with 6 specially trained dogs, are going to Turkey.
Correspondent Charles Deladesma, Town Hall News, joining forces with international nonprofit relief agency Food for the Poor to rush emergency relief, food and water to victims of the earthquakes in Turkey and Syria. More information available on the website srnnews.com. Watching Wall Street this morning, stock futures pointing to a lower open. Right now, the Dow futures are down 125 points. NASDAQ futures off 22. More on these stories at townhall.com.
Miss Prager here. Sue and I mean it. Dogs are part of our family. We love Otto and Snoopy so much. There's nothing quite like their loyal companionship. So we provide them with Rough Greens. In fact, I just talked to my wife about it because we want them to be healthy and we want them to be with us as long as possible. That's true. I know Sebastian Gorka feels the same way.
The Pragers and I couldn't agree more. Our pups, Killian and Leia, rely on us to provide what's best for them. And naturopathic Dr. Dennis Black has packed Rough Greens full of vitamins, minerals, digestive enzymes, omega oils, and more that supplement their food in a way that has shown us great results. Trying out Rough Greens is an easy yes, recommended by me, Dr. G.
Naturopathic Dr. Dennis Black here, and I'm so proud that the Pragers and Sebastian Gorka have entrusted their dog's health to Rough Greens. I'm so confident that Rough Greens can help your dog, I'm offering you a free Jumpstart trial bag. Just cover the shipping. Yes, your dog's food is dead food, but you can bring it back to life with Rough Greens. Go to ruffgreens.com today.
From the Michaels Flooring Outlet Weather Center.
A dry, chilly morning in St. Louis. Temperatures in the mid to upper 30s and cloudy skies. But by lunchtime, rain will be surging in from the north with scattered showers and a few thunderstorms possible as we go through the evening. And there's even a low risk of severe storms east and south of St. Louis and from St. Louis east and south. Overnight lows tonight in the low 40s. The high on Thursday, 52 degrees under partly cloudy skies. Gets a little breezy. I'm KMOV First Alert meteorologist Kent Earhart.
This hour of News Talk STL is brought to you by Stifel, serving investors for over 130 years. Contact your Stifel financial advisor at stifel.com. That's STIFEL.com.
Hey, Tony Colombo here with Tim Jones for the Wallner Home Selling Team at Berkshire Hathaway. My wife and I wake up every day thankful to the Wallners for the great new home they helped us find and for the tremendous success we experienced while selling our old home. The Wallners have years of experience and a work ethic that is second to none, and for us, the results speak for themselves. But Tim, it's not just the Colombo family. So many St. Louis families have been helped by Rodney and Jen Wallner.
They sure have, Tony. So if you have been thinking about selling your home, don't wait. The market is changing, but it's still a great time to sell. Put that experience and work ethic to work for you and see firsthand why the Wallners sell 15 times more homes per year than your typical realtor before this window of opportunity passes you by. If you've been thinking about selling your home, don't wonder to yourself about how much you can get for it or how fast it could sell. Just call the Wallner team now and get those answers so you don't have to worry or wonder another day. Just call 314-810-SOLD. That's 314-810-SOLD. for the Wallner Home Selling Team.
Free speech is alive and well in America.
Sometimes it's hard to know what's real and what isn't.
Right here.
The country is heading in the wrong direction under this president.
We're suffering shortages. America's running out of everything.
News Talk STL. News, analysis, opinion. Mike Ferguson.
You play ball like a girl.
Gabe Pfeiffer.
I triple dog dare you.
Get up! Get
up, St. Louis?
So it's time to get out of bed. Pour yourself the greatest cup of Kofifi the world has ever seen. Rise up with one voice, drain the swamp, and take back our country. Today's the day we're going to do it, and it's time to do it right now, believe me.
Mike Ferguson in the morning on News Talk STL.
In the last 2 years, my administration has cut the deficit by more than $1.7 trillion, the largest deficit reduction in American history. Under the previous administration, the American deficit went up 4 years in a row. Because those record deficits, no president added more to the national debt in any 4 years than my predecessor. Nearly 25% of the entire national debt that took over 200 years to accumulate was added by just one administration alone, the last one. They're the facts. Check it out.
Welcome back to the Mike Ferguson in the Morning Show. This is Paul Kurtman filling in for Mike Ferguson here at News Talk STL. And Stell, Gabe.
Yeah.
He's not wrong, but he's not right. Okay.
So what are the facts? Is there a little nuance here that we're missing?
Yeah, we can call it nuance. We can call it spin.
Yeah.
We can call it any number of things. We can even call it an outright lie.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the fact that it is true. It is true that the deficit did increase substantially under President Trump.
Mm-hmm.
And I love Donald Trump. I love a lot of the stuff that he did. However, we have to not allow ourselves to be blinded by his popularity to the truth. And the truth of the matter is the deficit increased dramatically under President Trump. And a lot of the inflation that we're dealing with right now got started. Some of those policies that really began to kind of put that on steroids, they got started under the Trump administration, but they got put on steroids under the Biden administration.
Yeah. And primarily we're talking about COVID policy,
That's
I imagine.
right. That is exactly right. Because President Trump was in the Oval Office when suddenly people started getting sick and we started looking for answers and we started accepting, all these mandates about closing your shops, closing your business and masking your kids. Everybody go home. You're not allowed to leave your house. You got to stay indoors. All of this stuff, things that we haven't seen nationwide like we saw it since February 2020. That all came to be under Donald Trump's administration. And, of course, Congress, both Democrats and Republicans, in fact, not even really Republicans, because which party had Congress
the whole time?
The whole time.
Yeah.
It was the Democrats. And Donald Trump cannot, from the swipe of his pen, create brand new money. All of this has to be done. All of these bailouts, all of that was passed by Nancy Pelosi and the House Democrats. Republicans, in large part, did go along with it, and all of this was in cooperation with the Trump administration because they were trying to get some relief to the American people, which kind of makes sense. If you're going to tell people you're not allowed to go to work, well, then you better send me some money.
Right, exactly.
And so that's kind of the flip side of this coin. But it's true. There was a huge, lots of spending going on. There was a huge deficit. We were spending more money than we were making. But Biden is leaving out a pretty important context here. While it's true that the federal deficit fell by 1.7 he almost said billion.
Yeah.
But it fell by $1.7 trillion under his administration since 2021. And that includes a record $1.4 trillion drop in 2022. And this is from CNN, amazingly. They say it is highly questionable how much credit Biden deserves for this reduction because Biden did not mention that the primary reason for the deficit falling so substantially was that it had skyrocketed to a record high under then-President Donald Trump in 2020 because bipartisan emergency pandemic relief spending, which after Biden got in office, all of that fell off.
Yeah.
They weren't doing it as much once he became the president because they had already been done. Now, he did do some.
Sure.
He did do some pretty big stuff. But you can't just suddenly start spending lots of money. This is the trick. This is the old political trick.
Yeah.
Let's spend $1 trillion, and then next year we'll say we're going to spend $2 trillion, and then we'll reduce that down to $1.5 trillion and tell people we're saving half a
$500
trillion.
Yes.
But really, we're spending $500 billion more. That's what Biden is doing right here in lying to the American people about the numbers because he thinks the American people are stupid.
In used car salesman speak, this would be like increasing your prices for 1 year, and then having a quote unquote sale and talk about how deep of a savings you can get on this used car that you were already overpricing to begin with.
It's like a legislative bait and switch.
Exactly. So it's very disingenuous. I mean, it's very similar to the claim for credit of all of the job growth, right? The greatest job growth in history, right? Well, this is post-pandemic policy, and really, in hindsight, and this is obviously 2020 hindsight. Oddly enough, the administration's policies in 2020, I think those should go down as the greatest mistake that the Trump administration made was just allowing the white coat mafia to kind of dictate how government spending, how government policy should go there. Now, it's understandable, if you feel as though well, I'm out of my depth. This is a healthcare issue. I'm going to defer to these experts who've been in place for 30 years. They have great reputations and all that stuff. That's a totally understandable thing to do. But of course, I don't think Donald Trump at that time understood how deep and how pervasive the swamp was, even in areas where it was supposed to be based on scientific truth.
And the thing is he thought he knew, and we all thought we knew too with him, but it was just way worse than anybody even thought. When you, like you said, say, hey, let's listen to the experts.
Yeah.
But when the experts start saying, yeah, but we're the only experts, we're the only people with any type of credentials, so anybody else who has a stethoscope around their neck, if they're not saying what we're saying, then we need to deplatform them, ban them, and shame them and run them out of the industry. And we saw a lot of that going on too. So we realized that the swamp is so deep that it pulls people in from these industries where all this money stands to be paid out to people. And so anyway, we're kind of moving off a little bit, but the whole idea is Biden is taking credit for something he literally is not doing.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like the natural course of things, right? Like water seeks its own level. What goes up must come down. So if all of a sudden you have a bunch of people getting sick, well, when they start getting better, you can't just say that the new guy on the block is responsible because he was there when people started getting better.
I healed them. It's like, no, that doesn't count.
Here's something, though, that's happening in 2022. This is all under Biden's administration here. America's imports exceed its exports by $948.1 billion. That's up 12.2% from 2021. So what we're talking about here is the U.S. trade deficit. Now, I've heard people talk about, kind of have 2 points of view on this. They say, hey, that's not a bad thing. That's just the market's moving. And so what if we're taking in more, we're importing more because we're consumers. Our economy's doing good. But the flip side of that coin, though, is this. That does make us more reliant on other countries for our goods and our services.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is this. When we're constantly relying on these other countries for goods and services, does that make us weaker economically? I would kind of argue that it does, because all somebody has to do is decide we're going to tighten our belts, or we're going to shut the switch and we're going to flip this off for a little bit. And then people are just going to be wondering, well, great, the economy just got so much worse because we don't have the lifestyle, or we don't have the things that we're used to having. But anyway, the trade deficit, we're receiving far more than we're producing for other people. And I feel like that does ultimately put us in a bad situation.
And the other issue with that is because we're importing so much, correct me if I'm wrong, we don't have any tax revenue coming in from production here in the country because we've got everything coming from other nations. So we don't have the plants and everything else here to produce the employee taxes, all the state taxes, et cetera. So we don't have any income coming in.
That's actually a really good point, because like the government's making money off of sales taxes and our income that we're then using it to buy these goods and services that are being made elsewhere. So like we're not even generating revenue from a lot of our own goods and services, except to just further bleed the American people as they try to pay for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's
and
a pretty good point.
And I mean, in addition to the economic fallout from having a trade deficit, there's primarily, and the one that I'm really concerned about is our international footing, our political footing as it relates to other countries, because, like you mentioned, it makes us vulnerable from an economic standpoint, but it makes us vulnerable from a political standpoint too, in terms of our ability to negotiate with other nations. If we are dependent on them for X, Y, or Z goods, that changes our negotiating capabilities when we sit at the table to discuss something else.
100%. Boy, does it ever! Yes,
and of course, there are wars fought over resources. And if those resources are in a foreign land, okay, now we are liable, or we're vulnerable to falling into foreign war traps, because of our dependence on all these other goods.
I think a good case in point here is China, because like they buy so much of the American debt. They are the ones who in large part have contributed to our financial position, because they will buy our debt, but they also supply so much of our goods. Like you can't walk through almost any store and not see so much stuff made in China.
Oh, yeah.
And so if now we have to suddenly negotiate with them, I bet it scares the Taiwanese people to death that we're so dependent on China for stuff.
Absolutely. I remember back in the day, I remember seeing the made in Taiwan. Remember those things used to be made in Taiwan back in the 80s and the 90s?
Little gold sticker.
Is made in Taiwan. But now you have the little made in China stamps, and they've taken over from the made in Taiwan. Like, I remember seeing this. Maybe it's just me just kind of constructing it from childhood or whatever, but I remember when more things in America were made in Taiwan, which is a close ally, I think politically, a much closer ally politically, and now so many things are made in China, which, if you haven't noticed, they're essentially our adversary. They're our enemy. They want to destroy us.
It's almost, I mean, it's like if they could, they would send balloons over our country just to spy on us.
Oh, that's crazy talk, man. What are you saying?
And this is kind of interesting too. So I know that this has probably been talked about at length, but I want to talk about it a little bit more. Why did we wait? I have ideas on this, and not all of it's bad, but maybe we'll talk about this when we come back. Why did we wait till it got not just across the U.S., but we waited till it got in the ocean?
Yeah.
Went totally across the continent. I want to ask you guys about that when we come back here in just a minute, but we will continue to move on. We're also going to talk about what the Democrats are doing in Jeff City, trying to stop the Republicans from exercising what I think is some pretty good financial policy. But we'll discuss all this and more when we come back here on the Mike Ferguson Show, 101.9, 94.1 News Talk STL.
We give you news, analysis, opinion, and more. Only on News Talk STL.
Hey guys, Columbo here, reminding you that if you belong to an organization like a school or a church, or your kids are part of a group or a sports team that needs to raise money, there's no better way to do so than with a TJ's Pizza fundraiser. TJ's Pizza has been helping local organizations raise money for over 30 years to the tune of tens of millions of dollars. A local company helping local people, and there's lots of different ways TJ's can help you raise big money fast. Get started now at tjspizza.com.
Columbo and Katie.
In a call with reporters, White House officials maintained the president's commitment to cooperating with the Justice Department and the special counsel's investigation, but refused to answer when asked whether Biden would sit for an interview as part of that probe. It's kind of like Meatloaf. I'd do anything for love, but I won't do that.
I'm sorry, I'm still on the video of Meatloaf. That was an awesome video.
Tony Columbo, Katie Fitzpatrick. Weekdays at 2 on News Talk STL.
Hey, it's Vic, and I'm here with Kathy Connor at Connor Roofing. Kathy, what makes Connor Roofing different?
Hey, Vic. I'm glad that you asked. I think that what really sets Connor Roofing apart is our relationship with our customers. It's very important to us to develop that trust with the homeowner. This is what has allowed us to serve our friends and our neighbors in the St. Louis area for 30 years. Whether we are doing a roof or a gutter repair or even a full replacement, you count on Connor for quality service and workmanship.
Thanks, Kathy. To find out more, visit them at connorroofing.com. That's CONNER roofing.com.
Fox News commentary.
Here's a plot twist for you. Illegal immigrants busted the Big Apple are fleeing to Canada to get away from the filth of the city. I'm Tommy Lahren. More next.
If I could be you.
And you could be me?
for just 1 hour.
If you could find a way
To get inside
each other's mind.
walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
We've all felt left out, and for some, that feeling lasts more than a moment. We can change that. Learn how at belongingbeginswithus.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
New York City has become a real crap hole when illegal immigrants are boarding taxpayer-funded buses to Canada to escape the rampant drug use and homeless population of the Big Apple. Several migrants spoke to the New York Post saying they are skipping town with free bus tickets to Canada to escape the drug use, crime, and homeless crisis in NYC. I mean, they're not wrong. New York City has taken a turn for the worse, but you know it has hit a fever pitch when supposed asylum seekers complain it's too lawless and filthy for their liking. But let's keep in mind, many of these migrants are also disgruntled they were evicted from taxpayer-funded luxury hotels, many of them having trashed their accommodations over the course of their stay. It's all such a mess, every part of the situation. We should not be funding the travel whims of illegal immigrants, and we shouldn't have allowed millions to waltz across our border in the first place. Does anyone see this ending well? Joe, get a grip. I'm Tommy Lahren, and you can watch my show Tommy Lahren is Fearless at Outkick.com.
This is News 4 Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton, and we're proud to be the official winter weather source for News Talk STL. The First Alert Weather Team is working hard to keep you ahead of the big weather changes and help you plan your day. So stay connected this winter with Channel 4 and News Talk STL.
Dan Bongino here. Keep it on News Talk STL because my show starts at 11 a.m. Right now, it's back to Mike Ferguson in the morning.
Welcome back to the Mike Ferguson Show. Paul Kurtman filling in for Mike this morning. And Gabe, Stell, I want to talk a little bit about, I have some ideas about this balloon that flew over the U.S. last week. Now, during the State of the Union address, Biden was talking about how strong he is on foreign policy.
Yeah, whatever.
And we have a fighter jet out there with a recent air balloon kill.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Under his administration to help him make the point.
By the way, this was the meteorological balloon of white supremacy.
Yes, that's
I'm
right.
just letting you know that's what it was.
Yes, the Chinese face of white supremacy.
I was waiting for someone on the left to label it that way. Nobody did, so I thought I would take the opportunity.
Give him time.
Yeah.
Give him time. The more we talk about it, they'll be like, these white supremacists.
Because everything is white supremacy.
Yeah, everything is.
Everything.
It was a giant white balloon.
Yeah, see? It's in, and it's above you.
That's right.
It's declaring its superiority.
Yep, the patriarchy of balloons.
By way of elevation.
Oh, that is so funny. It's above you. So this balloon goes across the U.S. Now, you've got how many? You said that you have a list of military bases that this balloon actually flew over.
That's right. That's right. I think it's a list of 21. It's not numbered, but by my estimation, yeah, it's 21 military bases that were deliberately in the path. It was assembled by a American media group here, and they have this nifty little map here showing all of the little dots of our U.S. military bases. Now, there's a big cluster in the Northeast that it didn't go through, but some of the ones that it did pass over are kind of a big deal. So we got Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana, Ellsworth, Joe Foss Field in South Dakota. Those are two separate ones. Sioux City in Iowa, Offutt Optical Base in Nebraska, also Camp Ashland and Lincoln, A&G in Nebraska. Whiteman Air Force Base.
That's pretty important.
Fort Leonard Wood. Yep, both of those. And the St. Louis Army, St. Louis Army Human Resources, I don't think that really counts as a military base. But Scott Air Force Base in Illinois also was in that purview. Fort Campbell and Nashville and Smyrna Air National Guard bases in Tennessee. Houston Barracks and McGee-Tyson Air National Guard in Tennessee.
You know what? I know we got a lot of bases in the U.S., but it's hard for me to think that if I just drew like a random line across the U.S., I would run into 20 bases.
It's pretty impressive actually how many bases, and then of course you get Fort Bragg and Camp Lejeune and finally the U.S. Coast Guard station out in Macon. But yeah, it passed a lot of major areas, and I gotta say that I believe that base in Montana, that's a nuclear site. I think we have silos there.
It's amazing how the weather patterns took the balloon over all of those bases.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's as though the wind knew, oh, okay, yeah, we'll go over this way.
So
and thank goodness for the folks in Billings, by the way. You know,
Yeah.
and you guys know the story behind this with the guy who was in his office, looked outside and thought, well, golly, that kind of looks like a UFO out there. He takes a picture of it, and all of a sudden, within a couple hours, they're shutting down the airport there in Billings, and they're sending out fighter planes, and we've got a serious situation for a couple hours, and the rest of the nation had no clue what was going on.
You know, I was wondering, like, how do we not know this? It's a 200-foot balloon, and Gabe, you said something during the break, like, well, you know, the radar signatures, and
Yeah.
you know, they might not just, it might not be enough for them to know that this is something that we should even be aware of, or it's a big deal. And the idea that they would use a balloon.
Mm-hmm.
So there is this story that I read about how in Russia, probably in the mid-2000s, once more things began coming online, right? So much of the world is online that some intelligence operatives in Russia, rather than sending messages through a computer or through an email or whatever, they just decided, let's go back old school and let's just send letters in the mail, because people aren't looking in the mail for secrets anymore.
Right.
They're all trying to hack.
Yeah,
you know?
that's true. Wow.
And so it kind of makes me wonder if, like, this, just trying to think, like, all of our technology is geared towards detecting more impressive technology. Let's just kind of go back a little bit, because no one's going to be looking for a weather balloon. And if that's the case, still, why does Biden wait until it gets all the way across the country? Because I'm thinking to myself, this balloon, it had tech on it, right?
Yeah.
Is it not transmitting stuff to a satellite or back to China? Did we just let China just take? They basically were able to complete their mission
Yes.
by us letting them letting this balloon go all the way across. And the only thing I can think of in Biden's defense is we want it to come all the way across the country because we want to see everything that it was able to get. But by doing that, we also run the risk of letting China also get all that information.
Oh, absolutely. I'm convinced. I mean, if I'm running that mission for China, that balloon was in constant contact with a satellite, a communication satellite of their own, and that data stream was uninterrupted. Like that's kind of how I would have set it up. I mean, and from what I understand, at least before it entered our airspace, it had made controlled maneuvers.
Yes.
So that would suggest that there was, it was receiving command signals from wherever, whatever was the base, the home base for this thing. Now it probably did follow a meteorological, a plausible meteorological pattern there. Because I know there was a meteorologist. I can't say that word. There's a weather guy who who did predict kind of the final area of the balloon. So it did eventually kind of fall into.
It's a balloon.
It is a balloon. I mean, it can make controlled changes, but it did follow a pattern. But getting into the country to begin with, I think was definitely something that had to be controlled.
Did either of you guys see it? Did you see it, Stell? Because it came right over Washington. And
Yes.
You saw it?
Yes.
That's wild.
I have a friend of mine who said that she saw it, and it was still for about 45 minutes. It just didn't move.
And I'll be honest with you,
Really?
it looked like it was a lot lower than 60,000 feet to me.
Yeah, 60,000 feet seems like.
It would look like a pin drop if it was 60,000 feet, because you see planes going at 35, 40, 45,000, and it's a little tough to see them.
Well-
to see a balloon at 60,000, and granted it was a big balloon, and it was white with the sun reflecting off of it. But still, at 60,000, to me, as I was looking, I thought, you know what, that looks more like 35 or 40,000.
I saw pictures that people took with their cell phones, and I was like, my cell phone could not take a picture at something that's 60,000 feet away.
Well, and I think that's kind of what betrays the size of this thing. I think it's hard for us to kind of wrap our minds around it because we see a big airplane, we know we can kind of fathom that. We've been on those, we've been very close to those. This thing is many, many, many times bigger than an airplane.
200 feet.
It was and that's the payload. The payload was 200 feet long. So imagine
the payload was 200 feet long. So,
Yes.
So altogether, this thing's like 500-600 feet probably, and
probably even more because
Wow.
a balloon necessary to carry a payload that big would have to be many, many, many times the volume of its
that
payload.
is enormous.
It's enormous.
That's like that. So if it's like 500 or 600 feet in diameter,
Yeah.
that's
Probably.
like putting
Probably.
probably.
Yeah, I think there's an equation. I haven't looked at it lately. But there's an equation for what the volume of a balloon would need to be in order to carry, various sizes of payloads, various weights of payload. But okay, so a 200-foot tower. So imagine a 20-story tall communications tower, like a cell phone tower, right? That's because that's approximately what it was. I think I might have overstated it a couple days ago when I said a building, like a 20-story building, because those things are big fat things. So this is more like a tower, the way it's constructed.
So NORAD, or the North American Aerospace Defense Command, NORAD, told reporters that the balloon was roughly 200 feet tall.
Okay. So now they were talking about
carried a payload weighing more than a couple of 1,000 pounds.
Okay. So that's a different story than what we were talking about the other day.
But you did mention about looking like it was stalled.
Yes.
I did see a map of where it was situated in Montana for a while, and it was a circular pattern for quite a bit of the movement in Montana before it started moving down. And that was when my initial thought was, sure looks like somebody's got this thing under control.
Yeah, when it can pause like that, that's a command control.
And so, I feel like the world of technology is way bigger than anybody can really fathom. And so when you have this balloon coming across the U.S. with, these devices on it that can surveil, and then when you also think about the fact that our phones, everything that we have on our phones, and if you have TikTok on your phone,
oh yeah,
what are they capable of getting and capturing, not just from military bases, but like from American people, and the patterns and the metadata that you can capture and create patterns to understand people and their habits, and what it is they do, their productivity, measure their laziness or whatever. It is just incredible to me. It's incredible to me what we're capable of doing. It makes me wonder what else we can do. But I also wonder, how does a balloon that big, and that's not the only one. So now they're wondering if we've had them come across the U.S. before.
Oh, yeah.
And did Trump not know, or did he know and not say anything? Or did he already know? And this is the first time that, listen, we know there's a balloon because a guy, like Stell said, in his office looked outside and saw
a balloon. Yeah.
How is it that in Montana, where we have some of the biggest, most important bases for national security, how in the world is it that they didn't know, or did they know and just not tell us? And if they did know and not tell us, why didn't they shoot it down before we found out?
That's my thing. I tweeted this out not a long time ago, but a few days back when this story was blowing up. I was saying that if we had a truly sovereign nation with truly competent leadership, we would have never heard about this story. The balloon would have penetrated our airspace, which is illegal by international law. It would have been shot down, and it would be over at Langley getting torn apart by CIA tech heads, and we would never have heard about it. We wouldn't have to worry about it. All we would know is that somebody's watching over. Like we would rest in the idea that our government is watching out for us against foreign enemies.
And what you're trying to say, I presume, is that it would have been taken care of around the Aleutian Islands in Alaska.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Before it even got into Alaska and British Columbia.
Yeah, I mean, because U.S. territory includes Alaska. Yeah. So the minute it kind of crosses over into this area here, it's like, no, that's. Yeah, it would have been brought down in Alaska and be on a truck to Langley.
And here's the thing too, this isn't the first time China has spied on us. Yeah. I read it on my show on Saturdays. You can hear me here at News Talk STL every Saturday from noon to 1. And last Saturday from noon to 1, Paul Cook and I were talking about all these times just over the last 10 years. I only went back 10 years. And there was verified that the public knew about 10 times where the Chinese were caught red-handed spying on us.
To put it that way, red-handed.
Yeah. And then you go back to 2000, was it 2000 or 2001? We had an EP spy plane flying over near China, and I think this was done on purpose, but a Chinese fighter jet clipped a U.S. Navy surveillance aircraft.
Oh, yeah.
You remember this?
I remember that.
And they had to make an emergency landing, and the only place they could land was on an island owned by China.
That's right.
There was 11 crew members. China took them hostage.
Yep.
They held them. No, there's 24 crew members. China took them hostage for 11 days, and then they took that spy plane.
They kept the plane
that they clipped and forced into an emergency landing, and they picked through it and they completely tore it apart before they gave it back to us. They gave it back to us. I saw it. I was over there. I was in Okinawa, and they sent that plane to the U.S. in little pieces after they completely went through the whole thing, reverse engineered whatever it is they wanted to look at.
That's how they do it.
But we would let them. So they did that. They clipped one of our surveillance planes on purpose to force us into a landing so that way they could get their hands on our jet.
Yes.
And even then, we didn't do nothing.
Yeah.
But now we let one of them send their whole surveillance balloon all the way across the country, and then we shoot it down like, I think Biden would have won the next election if he would have been like, Rednecks of America, it is open season.
Have at it.
You let people go out. We're gonna force this thing down low. And I said on Saturday, I was like, man, I would get that thing, I'd mount it on the wall of the Oval Office. That's what I would do.
It's a warning to all others.
Hey, we'll be back here in just a couple minutes. We're going to talk a little bit about Democrats in Missouri and some legislation happening in Jefferson City, some policy as it relates to unemployment benefits. This is incredibly relevant to the economy and what's happening today. Make sure you stick around here. 101.9 94.1 News Talk STL.
In her eyes again. Get up. It's Mike Ferguson in the morning. St. Louis's new choice for conservative talk.
Our country is being attacked.
Live and local.
The fact that there are lines. Not received any updates on whether or not there was an uptick in the sale of Doritos.
This is News Talk STL. From the Michaels Flooring Outlet Weather Center.
A dry, chilly morning in St. Louis. Temperatures in the mid to upper 30s and cloudy skies. But by lunchtime, rain will be surging in from the north with scattered showers and a few thunderstorms possible as we go through the evening. And there's even a low risk of severe storms east and south of St. Louis and from St. Louis east and south. Overnight lows tonight in the low 40s. The high on Thursday, 52 degrees under partly cloudy skies. Gets a little breezy. I'm KMOV First Alert meteorologist Kent Earhart.
Would you agree that there is a point in history that every city must face? The city of St. Louis has been under a one-party rule for over 70 years. That can begin to change on March 7th and April 4th. Hi, this is Mary Teresa McClain, chair of the Republican Party's City of St. Louis. I want you to go to stlvoters.com now and meet our two candidates who will change history in our great city. Thank you for taking the time to go to stlvoters.com, where good decisions are made.
Paid for by St. Louis City Republican PAC, Curtis Farber, Treasurer.
News Talk STL is proud to have Doug Voss of Safe Money Radio as part of our lineup each week. Doug has been a staple on St. Louis radio for many years as one of the leading financial experts in the area. Doug and Safe Money Radio is on 3 times every weekend, but in case you miss anything, you can check it all out at DougVossSafeMoneyRadio.com or call 844-676-SAFE. That's 844-676-7233. Doug Voss is a registered representative. Securities offered through DHL Securities, LLLP. Member FINRA and SIPC. Do
you live in St. Charles County? Then you can get Mid-Rivers News Magazine delivered free to your home just by asking for it. Mid-Rivers News Magazine is the only print source for the political, school, business, and sports news happening in your hometown. Simply visit midriversnewsmagazine.com/subscribe to get a copy delivered to your mailbox. Or you can pick up a free copy at all area Deerbergs and Schnuck stores. Mid-Rivers News Magazine. Anybody who wants it gets it. Anybody who gets it wants it. Subscribe for free today.
This is what's happening.
We have set records for migrants coming into the country.
News, analysis, opinion.
It's unconstitutional what they're doing.
101.9 and 94.1.
Real security issue.
News Talk STL.
Hey, Bill O'Reilly here, and you can hear my no-spin commentary right here at 6:45 this evening. Now it's back to Mike Ferguson in the morning on 101.9 and 94.1 News Talk STL.
All right, welcome back to News Talk STL. This is Paul Kurtman filling in for Mike Ferguson. Gabe, Stell, I'm going to talk about an issue now that I remember having been brought to the floor of the House of Representatives when I was in the legislature throughout the 2010s. I was in the Missouri House of Representatives from 2011 to 2019. January 2019 is when I term limited out, so just a few years ago. One of the issues that always comes up is trying to exercise some reform on benefits, like welfare benefits, things like that, like SNAP cards. For example, when I was in office, one of the things that I learned was that these SNAP cards or EBT cards, whatever, these little debit cards that people get whenever they don't have enough money to buy food. You go into a grocery store or a gas station and it'll say EBT cards accepted here or not accepted.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's a lot of people who get these cards and they just use them in like an underground market. They will trade them for drugs. They will trade them for different things.
Mm-hmm.
It becomes kind of a
currency.
It becomes a currency for an illegal market of things. And so we had representatives introduce legislation. One of them was Keith English. He's passed away. He was a Democrat, but he introduced legislation that would make those photo ID cards. So basically, like they would either reload it or they just send you a new card, but your photo's on it. And so if you go use one, it shows that you're the person who has a right to it, But one of the other issues that's being brought up in Jeff City that we've had brought up over the years is limiting the window of time that people can receive unemployment benefits.
Yes.
There is this dynamic that takes place when somebody files for unemployment benefits and they finally get them. They have 13 weeks before they expire.
Okay.
So we're talking about right about 2 months, a little bit more than 2 months maybe.
3 months. 13 weeks.
I got to do the math. Okay. It'd be good if I did the math, Yeah, 3 months.
Yeah.
I said 2.
Yeah.
Okay. 3 months. And so there's this dynamic that happens where as soon as people apply for these benefits and they get them, there's a tendency for people just to lay off looking for a job because they got 3 months.
You rest on your laurels.
And they can just kind of sit back and relax, take a break, get their bearings.
Yeah.
Take a breather. So State Senator Bernskoetter, who I served with in the House when he was a member of the House of Representatives, he's introducing legislation that would scale that back from 13 weeks to 8 weeks.
Okay.
And the left is losing their minds.
Okay, so going from 3 months to 2 months.
Going from 3 months to 2 months. And the idea there is if people know that they've only got 2 months, then they're going to be much quicker to go out and actually apply for a job and make sure that they get themselves into the job market than if they have 3 months. Because a lot of times people will wait a month and then they'll go out. Well, let's just get rid of that month that they're waiting.
Yeah.
Because the taxpayers should not have to subsidize
your month break.
Your month break. And I'm not saying that everybody does that, but a lot of people do.
Yeah.
So the Democrats are trying to thwart this in Jefferson City, but I think it's a good idea. In fact, I would even be opening to bring that back even further down than 2 months.
1 month.
Bring it down to 1 month and say, hey, this is something that you have to renew on a regular basis and show us on a regular basis that you're out applying for jobs because people gamed this system so bad.
Yeah, you know what? And I would be open even to like a little backdoor on it. So you could get a month renewal if you show that your search has been unsuccessful. So you're just like, okay, I've applied to this, and this over the course of this 4 month period of my unemployment, and I've just been unsuccessful. Maybe the market's bad, or maybe my field is in hiring right now. But look at all the work I've been doing to try and get back into the job market. If you could display that, I'd even give you a backdoor to reapply and get like an extension. That kind of idea, right?
Yeah, I think if you got 3 months, if you were like, hey, this is going to be, you can have it for as long as 3 months, but it's going to be on a week-to-week or month-to-month basis.
Oh, yeah.
Because we want to make sure that you're applying for jobs, not just any job, but jobs that you actually have where a reasonable person could conclude that this is a job you can be competitive for.
Right.
Like if I go apply to be a CPA someplace and I'm not a CPA,
right.
I'm probably not going to get the job.
No, that doesn't count.
And so
that doesn't count as a positive search.
And that might be kind of an extreme example, but like they need to be relevant searches and reasonable searches for jobs.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't think that's an unreasonable idea because the thing is, if you didn't have this social safety net, what is your reality if simply you just had to follow the law of the jungle and you lose your capability to provide? Well, you're gonna starve in a few days. There's a fire underneath your your belly there. There's fire in your belly there to go out and do something because nobody's coming to save you. Once you add that safety net, and all of a sudden people feel like they're invincible, and they're essentially kind of just resting on that net below the tightrope of life, right? They're just I'm just gonna lay back here. It's a giant hammock now. So the safety net becomes a hammock to some people, and you can't let that happen.
It's funny if you juxtapose what the government does, like you guys are saying it, and then look at homeless shelters. I can think of a few here in the St. Louis area. New Life Evangelistic Center did this downtown. I think St. Patrick's does it too. If you want to stay there, you have to come back every evening and show that you actually pursued a job somewhere, that you actually put an application in for a job. Okay, you can stay another evening here. I realize that that's a little bit different than what the government does, but the idea is still the same. Funny the government can't seem to do that, but local organizations are able to do it okay.
Mm-hmm.
There was a Democrat state senator from Kansas City. Her name is Lauren Arthur. I actually served with her for just a couple years when she was a member of the House. And I kind of like her. She's on some things she can be really reasonable, but this is actually kind of a dumb quote.
Okay.
She goes, "I hate this bill. Legislation like this does not help working families in any way." Well,
they're not working.
This isn't for working families. In fact, you would argue that it does not help. It actually hurts working families because now they're being forced to subsidize
the non-working people.
The non-working people who don't really have an interest in working.
Yeah,
right.
It's crazy. It's basically the subsidize your 30-year-old son living in your basement bill. Or the idea that, well, you know what, he's just trying to get back on his feet. It's like charging him rent would be it would be so passé and so just mean. He's just finding his way through life. And of course, I'm the guy get the F out of my house. Go get a job.
It's been 2 years.
Go get a job.
Yeah, I think you can move.
Get out of my house.
I just don't understand. See, this is where the Democrats have this huge fallacy here. This idea that. And this is why I think that it's just totally superficial. It's just about power because their idea of helping people is just giving them the money.
Mm-hmm.
And so if they're really, really about the working family or the working man, then you would want to help those people get back to work. And you don't help people find jobs if you incentivize them to actually not go out and find a job. And then by the time this 3 months is coming up to a close and they realize, oh, man, I got to go out and start applying. Well, then they're just wind up right back in the same position that they were in before they applied for these benefits in the first place.
Yeah.
They're running out of time. They kind of run the clock out.
The left is kind of like a toxic, smothering hover parent, and the right is like, the guy, the parent that wants you to pull yourself up by your bootstraps and get your act together and go be a functioning adult.
I feel like we need an acronym for that. A toxic hovering smother parent. That's a THSP.
Yeah, there you go.
Hey, when we come back here in just a couple minutes, we're going to talk about, Stell, you sent me this article on ESG. And so I want to talk a little bit about ESG, investing, what the Biden administration is doing, and how it could really, really negatively affect people and the markets. But we're going to talk about that when we come back. Make sure you stick around because this is one of those things that kind of fires me up a little bit. And we will continue to fact check President Biden's State of the Union speech as the hour progresses. This is Paul Kurtman filling in for Mike Ferguson here at News Talk STL.
Columbo and Katie.
Join us on Wednesday for State of the Union reaction from the Insider's Insider, Rodney Boyd at 2:20. Then we'll open up Close's Cabinet with Mark Close and Skip Weber at 3:05.
Weekdays at 2 on News Talk STL.
If you believe Brandon and the supply chain issues are still in crisis, or even if you don't, hurry into Southern Armory, your Second Amendment headquarters for the best selection of firearms, suppressors, holsters, ammunition, pepper spray, and knives. Browse through our constantly changing inventory, order something special, or have us repair or modify that firearm that you've been putting off. Try our firearms training simulator. See the demo video on our website. Come into Southern Armory, 9901 Watson Road, 1 mile east of 270 and 44, and southernarmory.com. That's southernarmory.com.
Hey, it's Katie. We here at News Talk STL really appreciate the growth in our business during our first 18 months since we signed on the air. We appreciate the great local businesses like Save Money with Doug Voss, Crypto World, and the Natural Institute of Health that have all become part of our family of advertising partners. If your business is interested in becoming part of the News Talk STL family, simply send an email to info@newstalkstl.com. 1019-941 News Talk STL.
For $1 a day, if any covered appliance breaks in your home, we guarantee to fix or replace it. All makes and models, washers, dryers, refrigerators, air conditioners, and more. Guaranteed to be fixed or replaced for $1 a day. Call the Home Service Club now for free information.
800-399-3701. 800-399-3701. 800-399-3701. That's 800-399-3701.
St. Louis's new choice for conservative talk.
We need change in our country right now.
Live and local.
They clubbed us over the head for 2 years.
Yep. You want corruption? This is how we get corruption.
This is News Talk STL.
Hey, it's Joe Pags. Catch me tonight at 7 o'clock. But right now, back to more of Mike Ferguson in the morning on News Talk STL.
All right. Hey, welcome back to the Mike Ferguson Show here at News Talk STL. This is Paul Kurtman filling in for Mike Ferguson. And we just have a few minutes left here in the 7 o'clock hour. But I want to talk about what President Biden is doing that a lot of people don't know. And this is, I've known about this because this is my industry in the financial services. I'm an investment advisor. I own PR Kurtman Investments. And so I actually wrote an article about ESG investing on my blog, which you can find at prkurtman.com. And the title of my blog is Beware the ESG Activist Investment Advisor. And it sounds kind of strange. Like, wait a minute, my financial advisor is an activist? Why should I be worried about that? And here's why you should be worried about it. It's because last November, President Biden repealed a Trump administration regulation, and Trump's regulation would require, and this sounds kind of crazy because you don't really need a regulation for this, it's common sense, but Trump had a regulation saying that fund managers can only make decisions, investment decisions, based on the best interest of their clients, and has to be structured around the financials of a company. So in other words, if you're going to be investing somebody's money, you need to put their money into a company that offers potential for some type of return, whether it's through dividends or whether it's through growth, because you're trying to put people's money to work for them so it grows into more money. Why is this important? Because you have retirees that need their money to grow so they can actually retire someday.
And have a pension fund.
And have a pension fund. Have the funds available to live off of in retirement. That's kind of the whole idea behind investing. You want your money to grow.
Yeah.
So Biden comes along and says, well, wait a minute. It's also in the best interest of investors to have a sustainable, healthy planet.
Oh, boy.
So I think it's also important to make sure that we invest in companies that are making commitments to save the planet and to help fight climate change. So now, because of what President Biden is doing, you could have a fund manager who says, yeah, here's some companies and here's what their returns look like over the last several years. But there's also these other companies over here, and maybe their returns aren't great, but the return that you get, socially speaking, because they're all about Black Lives Matter, or they're all about sustainable energy, or they're all about fighting climate change, that stuff is important to you too, even if you don't know it. So I'm going to take your money and I'm going to invest it in these companies. And even if you never get a return and your money doesn't grow, at least you're investing in good, warm and fuzzy companies that are going to save the planet. And now we have a number of conservative groups who are pushing back and fighting back against this. The article that you sent me, Stel, which people can find if they go to paulkurtman.com, they can find this article. Scroll all the way to the bottom. It's radio number 90. You'll be able to find the article that Stel had texted me. I went ahead and put it on my website. More than 100 conservative groups back Democrat Joe Manchin's plan to block Biden from his woke plan to let retirement planners, there's a lot of plans in this title, to block retirement planners from factoring in ESG in Americans' 401k investments. And this is incredibly important. And here's how devious and clever Joe Biden and the left really are. They are hijacking capitalism and turning it into socialism because they're taking your investments and they're deciding, let's take the money that would be going into these different funds that are helping to grow people's retirement plans. Let's take this money and instead put it in companies that focus on social justice. And let's put it in companies that focus on climate change. So they're literally, through Biden's rule, they're able to redirect investment money from companies that are engaged in capitalism and turning profits. They're able to turn that money and put it all right into these things that meet the progressive agenda. You see what I'm saying? When they found a very clever way to hijack capitalism and actually divert the capital to all these companies that are pushing all the socialist agenda, the climate change agenda, the social justice agenda. And this is what people have to be aware of, and they need to investigate a little bit, because if you have an investment advisor doing this, or if your 401k plan at your company has a fund manager who is doing this, I would argue it's not in your best interest, unless, of course, you decide, no, that's me. I don't care about the returns. I just care about saving the planet. But if they haven't had that conversation with you, I would say that they're betraying the trust that you give to them as an investor or as a client.
Absolutely. I mean, the fiduciary responsibility, right? That's kind of the term. And, in terms of company, if you're running a company and you're acting outside of your fiduciary responsibility, you're actually, I believe, is it criminally or civilly liable? I think there are penalties for doing that. There
are penalties.
Like the government would come at you if you are not acting under fiduciary responsibility as like the CEO of a company or something like that. So why isn't it the same for if you are doing so as an investment manager and you're not disclosing this silliness that you're trying to accomplish?
So does this cover the disclaimer that you always hear about past performance is not indicative of future results?
I don't know how you're going to work climate change into that.
Okay.
But I would feel like somehow or another, this is the thing. People need to know what's going on with their money.
Yes.
But this is the government that we have these days. You don't know. You don't need to know. You don't have a right to know. Oh, you have questions here. Let's just throw more money. Maybe this will shut you up.
Yeah.
And this is something that people fall for all the time. But listen, if you have money invested, pay attention to what's going on here. Mm-hmm. Because there is a plan by the left to take control, and they're doing it. I mean, they can do it right now and divert the money that would go into some of these companies and steer that money towards companies that are pushing the left, far left, progressive, socialist, crazy agenda.
Yeah.
So you just need to know. If you want to find out more about that, you go to prkurtman.com. You can send me an email. It goes straight to my cell phone. I'm always available and accessible. Hey, we'll be right back here in just a few more minutes. This is Paul Kurtman filling in for Mike Ferguson at 1019-94.1 News Talk STL.
Report cards are a good way to show how well your kids are doing in class and where they might need improvement. We at the Show Me Institute believe schools should get grades too, so parents can see how their child's school compares to others. That's why we came up with the Missouri School Rankings Project. Click on the website moschoolrankings.org and it's all there. Rankings and letter grades for all the schools in Missouri. The rankings are based on categories such as student performance in English language arts and math, ACT scores, and graduation rates. Then we take the rankings and come up with a grade point average, just like your child has. Each school and district has a grade, and the website is easy to use. And now we've added spending data for every district, so parents, taxpayers, and policymakers can see where the money is going. Don't you want to know how your child's school stacks up? Learn more at showmeinstitute.org. The Show Me Minute has been brought to you by Show Me Institute and Show Me Opportunity.
I'll second guest dinners with friends because they can be interrupted by diarrhea, gas, bloating, stomach pain, or oily stools. It turns out I have EPI, or exocrine pancreatic insufficiency, which means I'm missing the enzymes needed to digest food. My doctor prescribed Creon, pancrelipase, an oral prescription medication that replaces pancreatic digestive enzymes. Creon treats EPI due to cystic fibrosis, chronic pancreatitis, pancreatectomy, or other conditions.
Creon may increase your chance of fibrosing colonopathy, a rare bowel disorder. Tell your doctor if you have a history of intestinal blockage or scarring or thickening of your bowel wall, if you're allergic to pork, or if you have gout, kidney problems, or worsening of painful swollen joints. Call your doctor if you have any unusual or severe gastrointestinal symptoms or allergic reactions. Take Creon as directed by your doctor and always with food. Do not chew capsules, as this may cause mouth irritation. Other side effects may include blood sugar changes, gas, dizziness, sore throat, and cough. These are not all the side effects of Creon.
Creon is the #1 prescribed EPI treatment. Ask your doctor about Creon for EPI and visit creoninfo.com or call 800-633-9110 to learn more. That's CREONinfo.com.
KLGY HD3 Clayton, K270BW Bellefonte, KNBS Bowling Green. This is News Talk STL at 1019, 94.1, and always streaming at newstalkstl.com.
From townhall.com, I'm Rich Thomason. In his State of the Union speech last night, President Biden declared,
"We're not finished yet by any stretch of the imagination."
And Republicans say that is the problem.
From out-of-control inflation and violent crime to the dangerous border crisis and threat from China, Biden and the Democrats have failed you. They know it, and you know it. And it's time for a change.
The nation's youngest governor, Arkansas' Sarah Huckabee Sanders, delivering the GOP response to Mr. Biden's speech. Former Republican Congressman J.D. Hayworth challenges the president's assertion that inflation is coming down when actually it's only the rate of increase that's slowing.
I mean, the reality is the American people, working families, are having to spend more and more money just to survive, based on the inflation that sadly Joe Biden caused.
By all of that out-of-control spending, Mr. Biden also holding fast to a left-wing stance on social issues.
The president denounced last summer's Supreme Court abortion decision.
Congress must restore the right that was taken away in Roe v. Wade and protect Roe v. Wade.
He told lawmakers that he would veto a national abortion ban. Mr. Biden also urged Congress to pass more LGBT rights. In the GOP rebuttal, Arkansas Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders accused the president of pursuing woke fantasies. Greg Clugston, Washington.
With the death toll rising above 11,000, the Turkey-Syria earthquake has now become the world's deadliest quake in more than a decade. Town Hall News joining forces with international nonprofit relief agency Food for the Poor to rush emergency relief, food and water to victims of the earthquakes in Turkey and Syria. More information available on the website srnnews.com. Wall Street Dow futures down 118 points. More on these stories at townhall.com.
My brother-in-law died suddenly, and now my sister and her kids have to sell their home. That's why I told my husband we could not put off getting life insurance any longer. An agent offered us a 10-year, $500,000 policy for nearly $50 a month. Then we called SelectQuote. SelectQuote found us identical coverage for only $19 a month, a savings of $369 a year.
Whether you need a $500,000 policy or a $5 million policy, SelectQuote could save you more than 50% on term life insurance. For your free quote, call SelectQuote at 1-800-940-6161. That's 1-800-940-6161. Or go to SelectQuote.com. That's 1-800-940-6161. SelectQuote. We shop, you save. Full details on example policies at selectquote.com/commercials.
From the Michaels Flooring Outlet Weather Center.
A dry, chilly morning in St. Louis. Temperatures in the mid to upper 30s and cloudy skies. But by lunchtime, rain will be surging in from the north with scattered showers and a few thunderstorms possible as we go through the evening. And there's even a low risk of severe storms east and south of St. Louis and from St. Louis east and south. Overnight lows tonight in the low 40s. The high on Thursday, 52 degrees under partly cloudy skies. Gets a little breezy. I'm KMOV First Alert meteorologist Kent Earhart.
This hour of News Talk STL brought to you by The Dental Link. Call Dr. Alan Link today, 314-794-6464 to schedule your free consultation. Offices in Baldwin and Melville, 314-794-6464.
News Talk STL is proud to have Doug Voss of Safe Money Radio as part of our lineup each week. Doug has been a staple on St. Louis radio for many years as one of the leading financial experts in the area. You can hear Doug and Safe Money Radio 3 times every weekend on News Talk STL. But in case you miss anything, you can check it all out at DougVossSafeMoneyRadio.com. What else do our listeners need to know, Doug?
Simply put, I focus on helping pre-retirees and retirees build, preserve, and protect retirement assets, and I've been helping my clients solve their insurance and financial needs for the past 33 years. I also strive to educate my clients on how to prepare for retirement, minimize the impact of market volatility on their assets, and deal with the challenges of increased longevity. Call me today at 844-676-SAFE. That's 844-676-7233.
Doug Voss is a registered representative. Securities offered through DHL Securities LLLP, member FINRA and SIPC.
This is News Talk STL. News, analysis, and opinion from the voices you know and trust. News Talk STL at 1019, 94.1, and newstalkstl.com. Mike Ferguson.
We the people.
Gabe Pfeiffer.
It's not rocket science. Rocket science.
Get up! Can't you hear the alarm? Get up! Get up! Mike Ferguson in the morning on News Talk STL.
Good morning, St. Louis. This is Paul Cartman filling in for Mike Ferguson here at Mike Ferguson in the morning, News Talk STL. I'm in the studio this morning with Gabe Pfeiffer and with Stell. And I tell you what, guys, I don't think there's any lack of good quality guests to come on the morning after Joe Biden manages to make his way through a State of the Union address and just kind of help us unpack the spin, the lies. Maybe our next guest has some comments about that too. But joining us right now is Brad Slager from Red State. And Brad, can you help us out here? Tell us a little bit. What are your first thoughts about that State of the Union address? If I had to ask you, what's the one thing that stood out as the biggest lie or the biggest piece of spin? Is there anything in particular that stands out to you, or does it all just kind of fall into the same mix?
Oh, yeah, that'd be hard to pick. There was just so many elements. I'll say this, though. The one that probably jumped out at me was when he started talking about the border and how he's got border reform policies that he wants to put in place.
Yeah, that's pretty laughable.
I had to step back for a second and just say, since when? Because when Joe Biden came into office, the very first week, he issued, something like 42 executive orders, and 25% of those were about rescinding Donald Trump border policies and opening things up at the border. Now suddenly he's a border hawk. Not buying it.
Yeah, when he says something like that, I'm thinking to myself, it's as if he's under the impression that the American people have not been paying attention or even turning their television on at any point in time in the last 2 years. Because if there's one thing that both the left and the right, I think, can agree on, and that is this: he hasn't done anything on the border. I mean, we've had one of the worst border crises that we know of, with thousands or tens of thousands of people crossing the border on a daily basis. And so when he said that about the border, I'm like thinking to myself, where in the world is this coming from? Followed up by, I think, almost just as wildly insane are his claims about the economy. But what else do you got? Like what else about that speech? I'm just kind of curious. I kind of focus in on the economic stuff because I'm kind of a numbers guy, but so much of what he had to say was really just quite baffling.
Oh no, absolutely. I mean, we can expect this kind of thing though too when it comes to that. So this administration for 2 years, everything with the economy is very much based on cherry picking numbers. Hey, look at this one metric. They're over here in this one sector, there was an uptick instead of looking at the broader picture. So, he's saying things like, yeah, gas prices are $1.50 down from its peak. It's like, well, when was your peak? During your administration, Joe. It's that kind of selective bargaining that they do with these kind of things. And he's talking about how he created a record 12 million jobs, more in 2 years than any president did in 4 years. Okay, but that's because you shut down the economy during the pandemic.
You know, Brad, you know what it
coming back.
You know what it reminds me of is a company having two sets of books. And,
Yes.
and he's using one set of books, and we're looking at it and going, you know what, those aren't the numbers that we see. Where are you getting this from?
Yeah, they've done this throughout his 2 years so far. It's a very incomplete economic picture. So anytime there is good news, they focus on it. If there's bad news, it doesn't get addressed at all.
Good morning, Brad. Gay Pfeiffer here. So, did you play a drinking game, and what drink did you use?
Well, we did. I was doing a live podcast last night with the network I'm on there, and we had a couple of touch points. One of them was whether or not Beau Biden would be mentioned. He was late in the game there.
Oh yeah,
and I did lose out though because there was no reference to the balloon. I thought for sure there would be. He came up real close to it, but then never actually brought it up. So I lost on that one.
Was the kiss on your bingo card by any chance?
No.
No?
That
Okay.
did spark a lot of interest. Yeah, there was a lot of questioning. It's like, wait a second, what's going on the balcony?
Yeah, I would have had questions. I'd have been like, "What kind of bingo are you playing?"
Now,
what's kind of funny too? If you saw Joe's face, he even kind of arrested a little bit. He was like, What? Huh?
That's funny. Now, what really surprised you about his remarks, or was there anything that actually surprised you about what the president had to say last night?
Yeah, I wasn't really surprised by too much at all because it was all expected. I came into this expecting it to be kind of a smoke and mirrors show, and it was. I found it funny that before the speech, Kareem Jean-Pierre came out to say, hey, this is going to be Joe Biden. He wrote it. No question about it. And it was like, yeah, but there were no questions. You're being defensive about something that wasn't asked. And he put out a tweet with his 3-ring binder with the speech in it, and it had the introduction on it. And at the very bottom of the page, it said, pause. And I thought, wait a second. Who writes stage direction for themselves in a speech? It was pretty clear this was given to him. So, yeah, we were also anticipating, because last year, don't forget, at the end of his speech, he said, go get him. And that was actually the direction for the security to go to the podium. And read that.
Go get him.
We didn't quite get that sideways venture from him, but we were disappointed at the result. But there was a curious part, though, when he talked about China, too, where he started shouting and said, what leader wants to be Xiaoping? And it had no reference to anything before that. And we were just, I think at that point, you could see the batteries were running low on Joe.
Now, do you think he skipped a part, or there was a part missing that maybe that was supposed to kind of be a punchline too?
There's probably a hiccup somewhere in the process because it didn't link up to anything. And, again, we were all listening live and said, wait a second, what is this? And as animated as he was getting about it, that was the funny part. It was like he thought he was really delivering a major punchline, and everybody was kind of sitting back and saying, well, wait a second, what? So it clearly it didn't work. Let's just put it that way.
Brad, we had a guest on earlier this morning, and one of the things they brought out was how little President Biden actually referenced or made any point to talk about foreign policy, which is kind of astounding considering the fact that we just had this balloon, a surveillance balloon, fly across the whole country before we shot it down. But then we also have been sending so much money to Ukraine, and we have all this rhetoric coming from Russia and the different people in Russia, and it seems like I kind of feel like it's gotten a little bit more quiet on what's been happening in Ukraine just over the last week or two, but we're just still as entrenched as ever, even more so than we have been, and we probably will be even further entrenched in the future if this thing lasts so long that we actually are able to get our tanks on the ground. Why do you think President Biden just didn't spend a lot of time talking about foreign policy and our enemies and how we're going to deal with people? It seemed to me that was a kind of a strong thing that we heard a lot from President Trump, even Barack Obama, certainly George W. Bush, whenever they gave their State of the Union addresses. We just didn't hear a lot of that.
Well, I think that's based on his track record. If you just look at his overall international machinations, he just has not been impressive at all. I mean, Afghanistan is the obvious one, but even when he goes out on the international stage and meets with foreign leaders, it's always in a diminished capacity. I mean, there was the one, was it the G6 summit or such, where of all people, Boris out in London was the one kind of like directing him and making him look inept, which itself is kind of explanatory. I just think that he's a shrunken figure when it comes to international politics in general. And when you look at the Ukraine, all we're doing is cutting checks on a regular basis.
Yeah.
That's the extent of it. I mean, Adam Kinzinger the other day was talking about how, it's just a bargain. And I was like, really? $100 billion have been issued to this country. Just, here you go, guys. It almost would be cheaper if we had gotten involved directly in a conflict. All we're doing is just giving blank checks left and right. What's it accomplishing is the question, though. And, yeah, there's not that one international policy or event that Joe Biden can point to as like, yes, there it is. That's what I did. He doesn't have that on the agenda. So I think they just sidestep the global theater in general.
Are you aware of what other countries might be thinking about the State of the Union? We heard a clip earlier in the show from an Australian commentator who was very not impressed with Joe Biden. Are you getting that sense from other world leaders or other people around the world, how they're looking at the American leadership right now?
As far as the speech goes, not yet. I'm going to be doing some analysis today from the media side of things, because that's where my interest is. I cover the press for a couple of different outlets, and their responses are going to be the real interesting aspect of it. I think globally, it's what you just touched on, though. He didn't say anything on an international level that's going to impress anybody, so I don't think there's going to be much to discuss. He just doesn't. He's just not a factor on the international stage, which is amazing considering who we are. I mean, he tried to talk about NATO a little bit last night, and that was about all I really got from it. And other countries, I don't think there's much that they can point to and say, there was something of interest. Nothing in this speech was interesting, let alone international. So I don't expect any needle to be moved on the global stage.
Yeah, I think you're right about that, Brad. I don't think that this speech is causing everybody to sit up and start paying attention. I don't think we have any foreign leaders that are having their assistants and their secretaries all paying attention to what President Biden's going to say in this speech. Earlier in the show, we played a clip from an Australian who said, I just sat down on the couch just to see how many times he made a mistake and just got people's names wrong. And so I think that that's probably what most people are expecting out of Joe Biden right now. I do think it was some great responses that we heard from people like Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who really called him out for aligning with the woke mob in a party that can't even tell you what a woman is. I mean, she gave an excellent response, and I think we got some Republicans that are bringing some good responses. Let's kind of pivot just for a second. I want to talk a little bit about some other things that you're working on. I was just over at Red State just a minute ago checking out some of your articles. Do you have any articles or pieces that you're working on right now that people should be looking forward to?
I'm going to be putting out twice a week. I put out a small podcast called Liable Sources, where I go over the media coverage of things, and I'm going to be pretty much going extensively about the balloon coverage from last week, where the press just completely went sideways on that entire issue. I mean, on a daily basis, whatever was the narrative got derailed by facts. And it's been amazing to watch. I've said earlier this year that 2023 was going to be a really harsh year for the press, because just springboarding off of the Twitter files, how that's exposed so much of the, just the corruption and the collusion going on in the media. And already in just 1 month's time, we've seen the press starting to just spin out of control. I mean, look at the issue with gas stoves, for instance. As stupid and innocuous a topic as that is, they've gotten that completely squirrely, too. They came out and said, yeah, they got to ban these things. And then 2 days later, after mockery, the conservatives are a bunch of nuts. There's a conspiracy. No one's banning stoves. And then 3 days later, another Joe Biden administration official comes out and talks about banning stoves. They can't even get the simple story straight, let alone something like a Chinese spy balloon over the country. And it's just amazing to watch them operate as if nobody's noticing. That I think is the biggest thing going on. And it's going to be an ongoing issue, it looks like. They just pretend, I think, that people are not paying this close attention to their activities on a day-to-day basis even. And that to me is kind of amazing. As much as I have a negative viewpoint of the press, it still surprises me sometimes how they operate. And that's going to be a big story going forward, I think.
Yeah, I think they can't get out of their bubble. I think that like Donald Trump comes along, he's one of the first people to like really push back on him, and now it becomes something that people feel like they can do too. So I think I'm interested to see what 2023 looks like. Liable sources, I like the name of that podcast. Liable sources.
Nice.
And you know what? Speaking of sources, Brad, I'm just going to toss this at you. To me, from my perspective, as maybe a little bit older guy, I look at the press these days as being. They used to be government watchdogs. Now they've become government lapdogs, and that really bothers me a lot.
Oh no, it's absolutely the case. Over at Town Hall, I do a daily column in the VIP section covering the media. And I've got a variety of categories that I put the entries in every single day. And one of them I call the Democratic Custodial Services. They just are regular arbiters that go out there and fix things. Anytime Joe Biden messes up, you can count on somebody in one of the major outlets to come out and clean things up for him. It's like, oh, this is what he meant to say, or this is what's actually taking place. Is that your job? I have to ask that sometimes because it goes beyond just supporting the Democrats. I mean, they work on their behalf sometimes, and that's shocking to see to a degree, although I'm not shocked anymore because if I cover it, but they're really unabashed about backing one party. Just look at the balloon issue with the explanation that came out over the weekend where they said, oh, we found that there were 3 balloons that flew over the country during the Trump years. Well, where's your source on that? Oh, the White House. Do they have any proof? No, they didn't give us any. They ran with that story without thinking that, one, if you had something that bad on Donald Trump, it would have gotten out. And 2, they're saying, well, Joe Biden's brand new initiative that, he's got the technology in place to monitor our skies now. Since when? Because he can't handle the southern border with a fence, but they're putting up barricades on our airspace, supposedly. And yet still this balloon managed to travel across the country. And it's just, that's where they're at. It's just, well, see, it's because of this. And they try to bring up Trump. And it's like, great, okay, blame Trump. That means that Joe Biden's administration knew about the balloon ahead of time, doesn't it? Oops. And that's what they catch themselves all the time because they're just knee-jerk defense mechanisms for the White House now.
Hey, Brad, we just got a few more seconds here, but before we go, can you just tell people where it is they can find your podcast, find you on social media, or find the articles that you're writing?
Yeah, sure. Red State on the front page. I'm there frequently. Check the authors at the top of the page, and you'll see a rundown of all my stuff. Like I said, over at townhall.com, I'm in the columnist section there daily. It's called Ripped from the Headlines. That's my media column. And then over on social media, you can see me on Twitter at Martini Shark. I'm at Instagram and another number of others under my name. So you can pretty much find me where you're at.
All right. Sounds good. Brad, thanks so much for joining us this morning. Really appreciate you coming on and kind of sharing your thoughts and help us unpack that State of the Union address.
Yeah, it's probably going to be a couple of days of unpacking still.
Probably.
Thanks, Brad.
Thanks, Brad.
That's Brad Slager from Red State. You can find him at redstate.com. You can find him on social media. And I'm gonna take a listen to that podcast, Liable Sources. I like what he did there.
Yeah, it's
Liable Sources.
Oh, my gosh.
Great title.
Yeah.
It is a great title. Hey, we're going to come back here, and we got just a few more segments. We're going to be winding down the show. We're going to have a little fun on the show also. But, guys, there's one more lie that I want to get to that Joe Biden told last night, and we will unpack that. That's the last article of lies we will unpack from the State of the Union address that he gave last night. And so, listeners, make sure you stick around and listen in because it's going to be – I don't know if it's going to be enlightening. We all know he's a liar. We'll be back in just a few minutes. Paul Kurtman filling in for Mike Ferguson here at 101.9 94.1 News Talk STL.
Right now, before you blow us all away.
Follow us on Rumble at News Talk STL. Get up. It's Mike Ferguson in the morning.
Tony Colombo here, inviting you to a great night of live music on Saturday, February 18th, as Somebody to Love, a tribute to Queen, plays at Diamond Music Hall in St. Peters. 2 huge sets of music by Somebody to Love, 1 full night of Queen. This show is absolutely incredible, so support local music and mark your calendar now for Saturday, February 18th. Get your tickets at diamondmusichall.com, and I'll see you there. Somebody to Love, a tribute to Queen, brought to you by Weber Chevrolet.
The Vic Porcelli Show.
Nate Lucas, our sports guy, doesn't talk about sports. How many times do you think Adam Schiff got beat up on the playground when he was a kid? What a beta male.
Can you imagine having him as your representative in Congress? First of all, you little beta fish, why don't you do your job? Why don't you worry about your own backyard in California, which is turning into a third world country under your leadership? It is the same play every single time with these jackwagons.
Vic Porcelli, weekday mornings at 9 on News Talk STL.
American culture is at a crossroads. I'm Kira Davis, and in my new book, Drawing Lines, Why Conservatives Must Begin to Battle Fiercely in the Arena of Ideas, I challenge conservative Americans to stop retreating from the culture. I help you think critically through the pressing cultural issues of our day and offer practical advice and solutions. It's time for conservatives to make themselves uncomfortable and get engaged. Get inspired, get moving, and get winning. Pick up a copy of my book, Drawing Lines, available on Amazon, at faithfultext.com, or wherever books are sold.
Fox News commentary.
Here's a plot twist for you. Illegal immigrants bust to the Big Apple are fleeing to Canada to get away from the filth of the city. I'm Tommy Lahren. More next.
If I could be you.
And you could be me? For just 1 hour.
If you could find a way.
To get inside each other's mind.
Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
We've all felt left out. And for some, that feeling lasts more than a moment. We can change that. Learn how at belongingbeginswithus.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
New York City has become a real crap hole when illegal immigrants are boarding taxpayer-funded buses to Canada to escape the rampant drug use and homeless population of the Big Apple. Several migrants spoke to the New York Post saying they are skipping town with free bus tickets to Canada to escape the drug use, crime, and homeless crisis in NYC. I mean, they're not wrong. New York City has taken a turn for the worse, but you know it has hit a fever pitch when supposed asylum seekers complain it's too lawless and filthy for their liking. But let's keep in mind, many of these migrants are also disgruntled they were evicted from taxpayer-funded luxury hotels, many of them having trashed their accommodations over the course of their stay. It's all such a mess, every part of the situation. We should not be funding the travel whims of illegal immigrants, and we shouldn't have allowed millions to waltz across our border in the first place. Does anyone see this ending well? Joe, get a grip. I'm Tommy Lahren, and you can watch my show Tommy Lahren is Fearless at Outkick.com.
No big old corporate lib AM station telling us what to say here. Conservative talk for St. Louis. This is News Talk STL at 1019, 94.1, and always streaming at newstalkstl.com.
Hey, this is Larry Connors. Make sure you're listening later today at 6 o'clock on News Talk STL for my show, Larry Connors USA. Now, back to Mike Ferguson in the morning.
It was a beautiful day. Sun beat down.
All right, welcome back to the Mike Ferguson Show. This is Paul Kurtman filling in for Mike. Okay, Gabe, Stell, this is the final lie that I'm going to unpack from the State of the Union speech last night. Just doing a little fact checking, and I got the facts here. Okay, so I got what Biden said, and then I got the facts. And sometimes people can say things that, when just isolated into their own little soundbite, it's true. But when you actually put it in the broader context, you realize this person is saying something that's true, but they're saying it with limited context because they're just trying to deceive me. And that's what we call spin.
Yeah.
So here's a couple things, a couple statements that Biden made last night. Now, before I tell you what these are, understand that especially in the technology industry in America, there are massive layoffs happening right now.
Mm-hmm. I think eBay just joined the group.
Yeah. Do you know how many people they laid off?
10,000.
10,000 people from one company.
I think so.
From an online company.
Yep.
Laying off 10. First off, I didn't know that eBay had 10,000 employees.
Okay, so
is it 6 maybe?
Hold on, let me
Okay.
double check. Let me jump into tech that number. That might actually be the number stuck in my head from Facebook.
So Facebook and Google and Apple, a lot of these other companies in the tech industry have laid off tens and tens of thousands of people. It might be hundreds of thousands of people at this point. I'm not sure.
Okay, it's 500 from eBay.
500 from eBay. I'm surprised eBay even has 500 employees.
Yeah, like how much staff do you need?
Yeah, for that, right? Because they don't run any products.
Apparently, that's only 4% of their staff. 500 people.
Wow. Okay.
It's like how?
So they got 20,000 employees altogether.
I guess. Like what are you guys doing?
Man. So okay. So in the tech industry, lots and lots of layoffs. So clearly, and that's just in the tech industry, we have other companies too that are doing the same thing. So clearly, the economy can't be in as strong of a position as Biden says it is. However, this is what he said last night in his speech. I'm quoting. He said, additionally, over the last 2 years, a record 10 million Americans applied to start a new small business. Now, while this is true, you also have to consider the fact that over the last 2 years, there have been a lot of people who were never able to recover from the job they lost during the pandemic, and more people have tried to move into this gig space.
Yes.
Where they're just being contractors to do work, right? And then he says this. He says, near record low unemployment for Black and Hispanic workers. Near record low.
What is the record, Joe? Who holds the record, Joe?
That's the question. So who holds, and when was the record set?
When was that, Joe?
So the Black and African American unemployment rate was 5.4% in January 2023, just above the record low of 5.3% set under the Trump administration.
Wait a minute.
2019 maybe?
In August of 2019.
Whoa.
And you know what happens if you correct for the labor participation rate? Then that number goes crazy because that's a major it's a major contributor to the overall number, and it just disappears when you look at unemployment rate.
He says it's a near record low. Well, we need to understand what Joe Biden means by near because there's a difference between right and almost right. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There's a difference in the words that we use that would inform us whether or not somebody is actually hitting the mark or we're actually way off the mark. So when someone uses language like there's a near record low unemployment, well, near record low isn't the same as record low. The record low unemployment was actually accomplished by the Trump administration. The Hispanic and Latino unemployment rate was 4.5% in January 2023, not too far from the record low of 4% that was set in September 2019 during the Trump administration. So Joe Biden says near record low unemployment for Black and Hispanic workers. Not wrong, but also not right because he's trying to take credit for near record lows. The fact is that there's less of them employed than there was under the Trump administration. Here's the other thing he said, and this one is the one that really kind of gets me a little bit. He says the unemployment rate is at 3.4%, a 50-year low. And so it would be easy to come to the conclusion that President Biden is just a miracle worker, being able to put people back inside of a place of employment. I mean, he's doing what no president has been able to do in the last 50 years. But there are some misconceptions here. An unemployment rate of 3.7% does not mean that 96.3% of people in the U.S. are working. In fact, when you go to the Bureau of Labor Statistics website, you see different metrics. The one that we use to measure this unemployment number is called the U3. This is the U3 measure of employment. But what is more telling about the strength of our economy is what's called the U6. A lot of times people will refer to this as people who are marginally employed or underemployed. So these are people who they don't have enough work. Or maybe they get sporadic work, but not quite enough to make them want to, or have them have to qualify for unemployment. But there's not enough work out there. They can't find enough work. You know what that rate's at? 6.6% of American workers can't find enough work to live on.
That's amazing. That's crazy. And I was just looking up the labor force participation rate. Now it's been going down for a long time. I'm not exactly sure what what the suggestions are as why it's been going down, but it took a slight turn. If you look at the whole graph from I guess 2000, it took a slight turn upwards in 2016. And it went from it had hit a low of 62 point we'll say 62.5% or so at the end of 2015, and in 26 and by let's say 2019 or just before the cliff of COVID, it got up to like 63.4%. COVID hit, it went down to 60%. And it's barely recovered now at 62%. So the labor participation rate is significantly lower now, and not particularly trending well than it was at the height of our I feel it's like the height of our economy at the end of 2019. So the Joe Biden victory lap that he's taking on labor is very much fallen short of what the heights that we reached prior to his administration taking over.
I hate to be simplistic, but with my two eyes, when I drive through downtown here, there are an awful lot of businesses that are closed. I have friends who live and work in downtown Chicago, and they say there are dead spots during the day, which I would never have heard before. There are areas like Michigan Avenue in Chicago. 35% of the businesses are closed down on the Magnificent Mile. What? That's hard to believe. And we have a gal who is a good friend of ours who works for BBC in America, lives in New York City. Same situation there, where you have buildings that are deserted, and you have businesses that have closed because there are no employees to help these businesses stay alive.
Mm-hmm. I've seen cut hours of operation from various companies. I've seen people, the existing employees being put upon to basically do double duty in various departments, essentially just to cover so that the business can maintain where they're at. And all of this is because people have dropped out of the workforce and they're not coming back, and I don't understand it.
Quiet quitting. Right? People just decide they're not gonna put out, they're not gonna do the job at their work, they're gonna do the bare minimum. And then when you have people that are doing that at work, well, what happens when they actually lose their job? And let's talk about that for a second. Unemployment, in order to even qualify for unemployment, and did you guys know this? There's a lot more involved in this, but essentially the way we come up with our unemployment numbers is they poll about 60,000 Americans every month. I don't know anybody that actually trusts polling in general.
Oh my gosh.
But now we actually poll, and we only poll from a certain pool of people. Okay, we only poll people that can qualify for unemployment or are receiving unemployment. But we're not asking you if you're unemployed, if you were fired for cause and can't get unemployment, or if you're a contract worker, right, and you can't find work. You're not part of that pool that they're actually polling. So there's a lot more people out there that are unemployed. We only have a small segment of the population that we're actually finding out. We're actually drawing from them to find out what the unemployment numbers are, and we're not even factoring in all these other millions and millions and millions of Americans who have their own employment situation. Some of them are unemployed also, but they just don't qualify to be asked if they're unemployed. It's kind of ridiculous. Here's another lie. He goes, here at home, gas prices are down $1.50 since their peak.
Yeah. When was the peak, Joe?
Yeah.
When was the peak?
And what was the gas? What was the national average on the day that Biden took office? So gas prices, national average for a gallon of gasoline is still up over 30% from the day he took office. And he's bragging about gas prices having come down $1.50. This is what we're talking. And I'm not saying Republicans don't ever do this. Sure. They certainly do.
Yeah.
But the thing is right now it's become so bold from the political class that they will just openly lie to your face. You know why? It's because, and I said it earlier in the show, they think the American people are stupid. But I will say this also. the American people have given them a reason to think that.
I was gonna say, he's like, you know what, the results of the 2022 election, to me, kind of support that notion because while at the same time we were being told that everybody is feeling in their pocketbooks, they're having the kitchen table conversations about finances. The economy is the number one issue on everybody's minds. They know the Democrats' policies are the ones that got us here. They trust Republicans more with the economy. All of those things were the conclusions we were being told were being drawn from all of the public commentary and studies and all these other things. And then they go and give the Democrats back the Senate and barely give Republicans the House. And it doesn't jive with what we were being told they believed about the world.
It's like the voters can't decide which liar to trust.
Yeah,
right? They don't trust the Republicans with the issues they care about the most.
Right.
And so let's just give some of it to the Democrats, give some of it to the Republicans.
Yeah.
Republicans have done a terrible job making trusted friends with the American people.
Yeah. You got to sell it better, guys.
When we come back, we're going to ask the rocket scientist a little bit about Bigfoot.
Oh, yeah.
Amazing numbers here in Missouri. It's kind of exciting. I feel like I'm lucky because maybe I'll have a chance. But I'll talk a little bit about what that means here in just a few moments when we come back here at the Mike Ferguson Show, 101.9 94.1 News Talk STL.
Get up. It's Mike Ferguson in the morning. The news and talk
Today's hearing is a first step in examining the massive waste, fraud, and abuse
that matters to St. Louis.
in COVID relief programs.
101.9 and 94.1.
We are looking at everybody involved in the beating of Tyree Nichols.
News Talk STL. From the Michaels Flooring Outlet Weather Center.
A dry, chilly morning in St. Louis. Temperatures in the mid to upper 30s and cloudy skies. But by lunchtime, rain will be surging in from the north with scattered showers and a few thunderstorms possible as we go through the evening. And there's even a low risk of severe storms east and south of St. Louis and from St. Louis east and south. Overnight lows tonight in the low 40s. The high on Thursday, 52 degrees under partly cloudy skies. Gets a little breezy. I'm KMOV First Alert meteorologist Kent Earhart.
I'm Dr. TJ, owner of the Institute of Natural Health, co-owner of Optimal Nutraceuticals, and the host of Wellness 101. Wellness 101 is designed to cut through the nonsense and provide you common sense, science-based information regarding health and wellness. On the show, we discuss topics like thyroid health, gut health, hormone optimization, and many others. Our show airs Saturdays at 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. and Sundays at 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. right here on News Talk STL. For more information, visit us at inhstl.com. That's inhstl.com.
In times of economic uncertainty and chaos, your money means nothing. You may not even be able to get it from your bank or ATM. And the money you do have in the stock market will go down and down. What you can bank on is gold and silver. Gold and silver have been a reliable and trusted form of currency for thousands of years. Gold and silver have never been worth zero, and typically gold holds its value during economic turmoil. Call the Gold Hotline now and learn how to protect your money and your assets with gold and silver. And learn how to set up a new IRA or roll over your current one into a gold-backed IRA. Protect your money from the next market crash with gold and silver. Call now for your free gold guide.
800-281-4224. 800-281-4224. 800-281-4224. That's 800-281-4224.
St. Louis's new choice for conservative talk.
I think they're trying to attack the American people.
Live and local.
Gabe, Mike, Ken, you guys are my morning cup of mental coffee. I love the show. Definitely a convert from the old one.
This is News Talk STL.
Hey, Bill O'Reilly here, and you can hear my no-spin commentary right here at 6:45 this evening. Now it's back to Mike Ferguson in the morning on 101.9 and 94.1 News Talk STL.
Don't get me wrong. If I'm looking kind of dazzled.
And welcome back to the Mike Ferguson Show. We're going to take just a few minutes here and talk about this article that Stell sent to me. And Stell, I'm going to ask you about this first. So the article, the headline is this. And when you sent this to me, I saw it come up across my phone. I was like, Yes. I immediately forwarded it to my wife. Headline is this: Missouri and Illinois among states with the most Bigfoot sightings. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, everybody can say they've seen Bigfoot, but apparently there is a website that tracks credible sightings, like people who, in the timing, the place, video, whatever. And so they keep track of what they call credible sightings. And Missouri ranks in the top 10. We come in actually at number 9 with 166.
Oh, my gosh.
That's a lot of Bigfoot sightings. I don't know. I haven't seen in the article like what the timeline is on that. I don't know if that was like in 2022 or if that was in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
But 166 credible sightings. Like,
okay, now what counts as a credible sighting?
that's the question,
Yeah,
right?
okay.
But there are some that you're like, that's not credible because you're clearly inebriated, you know? This person just came out of a 5-year, coma. So if they're saying they saw Bigfoot 3 days ago, probably not accurate. But if you have somebody who's like a sheriff's deputy and they're out camping with their kids and he's like, I just saw something that I'm afraid to tell you what I saw.
Right.
Like that, or maybe
I can see that.
Or maybe they got a picture or something.
Right.
I have to be honest with you. The thing that triggered me when I saw it to send it to you is Kathy and I went down to visit her brother outside Dallas in Texas over the summer, and we heard numerous comments from folks and actually saw big cutouts along the sides of a highway of Bigfoot and Sasquatch.
Yeah.
And we were looking at those and wondering, whoa, what's going on down here? I thought we were the only ones here back here in Missouri who had this situation, and here down in Texas, we're seeing big Bigfoot and Sasquatch cutouts.
Are you a believer still?
I may be now after you go over this.
Okay.
Kathy's lived in Hannibal for a few years, and Hannibal seems to be kind of a hot spot for sightings.
Because of Momo.
Ah, that's it.
And they made a movie about Momo.
That's it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, what's Momo? You gotta
Momo.
enlighten me. Okay.
Momo is basically Missouri's, I would like to say, resident Sasquatch.
Right.
But up around Louisiana, Missouri, which is just south of Hannibal on the Mississippi River, in that area back in the 70s, maybe the early 80s, there were numerous sightings. Like people, like the whole town was like we're seeing this thing, like it's all over the place. So much so that they made a movie about it because it was just like this phenomenon that really took off.
Wow.
And so they made a movie about it, and it's Momo.
Okay.
But,
all right, I'm gonna have to look that up.
But all across the country, like you see these sightings, and if you go to Instagram, and there are Instagram pages dedicated to video of people that see things. And you look at some of them, you're like, okay, that's clearly a person in a monkey suit. But then you see other ones, and you're like, man, like that a human being does not have arms that long where they can actually grip a tree and shake it,
Oh, wow.
There's just so many of this stuff on Instagram. I believe that it's very likely, because like we were talking here in the break, I think the world is way bigger and fantastic than most people give it credit for.
Sure.
And I think that there could very well be something out there. I want it to be real. I think there could very well be something out there. And if there's that many sightings in Missouri, I feel like maybe now I have a chance of catching a glimpse.
Yeah, there you go.
Somewhere in the Washington area.
I mean,
I would love that. I would love it.
I don't see a reason why there couldn't be a species of some sort of great ape that has extended limbs and kind of walks upright. I mean, I don't see a reason why that couldn't be a distinct possibility. It's like it's not as though there's like a genetic limitation and only one species on the planet gets to walk upright. That's not how that works. So, I mean, it's entirely possible that there is a great ape that kind of looks like a Sasquatch or whatever.
And this country is so big.
Huge.
Like
the
the
world is huge.
You look at it on Google Maps and you think to yourself, oh yeah, I've been there. But there are hundreds, thousands, millions of square miles that are just out there that might have logging roads through it and nothing else.
Yeah.
Where you could easily bring I don't know, maybe a satellite balloon down.
Yeah.
Also that.
Where you could bring it. Yeah, where people wouldn't notice a gigantic 200-foot balloon.
Oh, see, I guess now we know. They didn't want to bring it down on any of the Sasquatch locations. That's what it was.
Maybe they're looking for Sasquatch. Maybe they saw this article and they're like, let's find out what's going on over there.
No, it's the EPA. They're protecting Sasquatch mating grounds. The same way that they protect like the ground squirrel or whatever.
Have you seen the movie The Village by M. Night
Shyamalan?
Shyamalan.
Mhm.
Okay, have you seen that movie?
I've heard of it. I know the twist.
The premise of the movie is, and I don't want to give a spoiler alert out there, but the premise of the movie is you have all these people, they're living it looks very colonial, like Puritan almost.
Yeah.
But then you find out, well, at the very end, you see a sheriff's deputy.
Like a modern day
sheriff's deputy, and they're like, oh, yeah, that's all fenced off. And you hear this comment, yeah, there's a group that was campaigning to get it closed down to airspace and all the, to keep everything wild and preserved. So the whole point, the whole idea here is you got these people inside living there so that way everything could be secluded, and they got government regulations to shut everything down, even close off the airspace.
Right.
So
Can't go in.
So they could fool people into thinking there is no other outside world.
Right. Yeah. There's no technology like that. It's all you have. The entire world is here inside the space of the village. Right.
Yeah.
And you would be capable of doing that because of the amount of land that we're talking about here.
And the flip side of that, isn't that kind of how we feel about the world we live in? The whole world is the world we know.
Yeah.
Right.
No, that's a good point. That's a really good
And
point.
speaking of the world, go ahead and give us a rundown of the top 10.
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
Top 10 places for
state of Washington, 708. California, 461. Florida, 338. They call them the skunk ape down there, the swamp ape. Ohio, 318. Illinois, 302. Oregon, 257. Texas, 253. Michigan, 225. Missouri comes in at number 9, 166. And Georgia at 140. That's the top 10.
That's amazing.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'd like to go on the rest of the show and maybe even take over Vic Porcelli's show just to talk about Bigfoot, but we won't. Hey, we'll be back here in just a few minutes, and we're going to wrap up the Mike Ferguson show with our final segment here at 101.9 94.1 News Talk STL.
Don't get me wrong. If I'm looking kind of dazzled.
Tim Jones and Chris Arps in the afternoon.
It's Wednesday. We'll talk about the President's State of the Union address, and at 5:25, we'll speak with Karen Fessler, GOP political operative.
Tim Jones and Chris Arps. Weekdays at 3:30 on News Talk STL.
It's Proctor spelled like doctor for custom window fabrics and shutters. Upgrade or start from scratch. Either way, Michael is the St. Louis expert. Check him out at proctordrapery.com and then call Proctor spelled like doctor for shutters, shades, and draperies.
Proctor Drapery, the best in town. No finer window fashion can be found. Call for an appointment at your home. Spell Proctor like doctor.
Hey, it's Vic. Everyone here at News Talk STL is incredibly grateful for the growth in our business during the first 18 months since we signed on the air. We appreciate the great local businesses like Southern Armory, Rhino Shield, Steph's Pizza, and the Wallner team that have become one of our many advertising partners. If your business is interested in becoming part of the News Talk STL family, simply send an email to info@newstalkstl.com. We have a wide variety of affordable advertising options. And thanks for listening to News Talk STL. Welcome home.
Have you been floored? Not until you've gone to Michael's Flooring Outlet. They've been a locally owned and operated family business for more than 28 years. You want variety? Michael's has carpet, hardwood, laminate, ceramic tile, luxury vinyl, natural stone, and many other options. Save money and get quality at Michael's. Plus, your installation will be done right the first time when you hire the experts at Michael's. You can shop in store at one of their 3 convenient locations or shop from home. Check out everything that Michael's has to offer at igotfloored.com.
Talk radio made in St. Louis for St. Louis. This is News Talk STL.
Our responsibility.
News, analysis, and opinion.
To provide updated guidance.
At 101.9, 94.1, and newstalkstl.com. For podcast articles and more, find us on newstalkstl.com. Get up. It's Mike Ferguson in the morning.
Okay, guys, we've only got like 5 minutes left.
Yeah.
And so let's just do it.
Okay.
Let's carry this conversation on a little bit more, because when we had our little break, that was just a tiny segment we just had. But when we had our break, and I feel like we shared more information during the break, and I'm like, that is fascinating. Gabe.
Yes.
Are you? Now you are a scientist.
I am a scientist.
So when you have ideas, or when you think of things that could possibly be true, like you don't approach things from just a wildly speculative, but usually you put some thought into some things, and this might not be real, but there's a possibility maybe.
Yeah. I mean, just I'm open to inquiry. I'm open to possibilities, but I don't live in a fantasy world, and I don't like to pretend. And that type of stuff turns me off. Unless we're talking about actual fantasy and fiction stuff, because I'm a Lord of the Rings aficionado. So things like that. So I can definitely separate the real possibilities from fantastical. And I think, based on the evidence of its appearance in multiple cultures across many thousands of years of human history, I think there were actually something that humans would call a dragon. I think that existed at some point, and maybe it was either hunted or just died out into extinction, or it died out or whatever. But
or maybe the flood,
or maybe something happened because cultures as far back as 5,000 years, and cultures as that have lasted through the medieval period, they all identify a large lizard-like creature that existed and was kind of ferocious, and they were scared of it. Now the breathing fire thing could be, and
the bombardier beetle shoots fire.
That's a good point. It's capable of shooting an acid kind of thing. So I mean, there are elements of it that could be, come across as fantastical, that are simply just an interpretation by a primitive people of a scientific truth that they hadn't really they can't understand. But the fact that it exists all over the place, it's like pyramids or something. Like for some reason, humans have this thing in common, and it's interesting to me.
And the imagery looks similar. Like I've been to Asia.
Yeah.
And I've been to Central America, and I've climbed on the ruins of these pyramids, and when you see these things, they have a similar look.
Yeah.
And so you would have to come to the conclusion that these people are drawing from a similar resource or a similar experience.
They saw this thing.
Yeah.
I mean, the idea that they simply made it up across multiple cultures, across multiple thousands of years of development seems the more far-fetched idea than that there actually existed a large lizard creature.
But it's not like when we go to Walmart, one's going to run out on the parking lot and grab us.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
But
well, except maybe here in Hannibal.
Except maybe in Hannibal, he might get snatched up by Momo. Yeah.
There's a fight I want to see, Bigfoot versus a dragon.
In the Walmart parking lot.
Walmart parking lot. Over a big screen TV.
I just because we've flown around the world and mapped it with a satellite doesn't mean we've been everywhere and seen everything. Back in the 90s, there were some scientists that, for the first time, they believe humans actually went on an island over in the region where the Philippine Islands are. And when I've seen the video, and there was these animals that just started approaching them that have never seen humans before.
Yeah.
And there was no predators. There was no meat eaters on the island. There was a bunch, but there was mammals. One of them, it was strange. It looked like the mix between like a panda bear and an anteater. It was just a weird looking animal. And they let these scientists just pick them up and hold them and play with them. And this was an animal about the size of a medium-sized dog, and like nobody had ever seen it up until like the mid '90s. I remember looking at this article and thinking to myself, wow, that is amazing. How many more places are out there that people haven't been to, you know?
Yeah.
And of course, thanks to the left, they don't want us going anywhere because we'll ruin everything.
Yeah, of course.
Which is probably true, right? We have a way of doing that a little bit.
To be fair, yeah. I mean, there's
some things.
A little reputation there. But, I mean, I think there's a way to explore the world responsibly. But, of course, everybody wants to take the extremes. Either you want to build a Walmart, in there, or you want to preserve it so much that we never find out about it. So, there's a middle ground here.
Yeah, I think so. But I am hoping that at some point in my lifetime, I would like for this whole Bigfoot thing just to be put to rest.
That'd be good.
Just want to find out.
And Nessie.
And
all of it.
Are we going to go there now? We don't have enough time.
We got no time, man.
We don't have enough time.
But the thing is, it's much more interesting than the State of the Union because all we got was lies and obfuscation from
at least with this, we don't know if these things are real, and everybody wants to find out, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because we do know inflation is real. We do know our weakness on the international stage is real.
Yeah.
And it's thanks to Joe Biden. So, yeah, let's go, Brandon.
Hey, it has been a pleasure to be able to fill in for Mike Ferguson here on the Mike Ferguson Show. Make sure you stick around for Vic Porcelli. He'll be coming up soon. And I will be back on Saturday from 12 to 1 right here at News Talk STL, 101.9, 94.1 News Talk STL.
Coming up on 9 a.m. in Mid-America, welcome home.
News, analysis, opinion.
It's part of the institutionalized police culture.
You cannot get good law enforcement officers unless you have law enforcement support.
This is News Talk STL.
We have produced pictures, we've produced emails, we've produced documents. Whistleblowers have identified Joe Biden as the big guy. That's a national security concern.
I don't think that there's a lot of things that would have happened in my life if my last name wasn't Biden.
101.9 and 94.1 News Talk STL.
What's happening right now?
And newstalkstl.com.
Hey, Columbo here for Zero Res. February is the month for love, but when was the last time you gave your carpet the love it deserves? Your carpet is the largest air filter in your home, so if it hasn't been cleaned, you're breathing unhealthy levels of germs. But Zero Res can help. If you book a cleaning now and mention the Columbo special, you'll get 3 rooms Zero Resified starting at just $119, plus they'll clean a hallway for free and take $75 off an air duct cleaning. This month only, so book now, 314-474-2020 or online at zeroresstl.com.
Do you own an annuity, either fixed rate, indexed, or variable? Are you paying high fees and getting low returns? If so, Annuity General would like you to have this free book to learn the pitfalls and mistakes of buying an annuity. The Annuity Do's and Don'ts for Baby Boomers contains the little-known truths about annuities, like how to help reduce your fees and increase retirement income,